Te ainu e tata. Katohi e tutohi anuku, katohi e tutohi arangi. I tupu I huko ngā pū, ngā wau, ngā more, ngā pūke, ngā nā wānanga, ngā tauira. Ha tēnei te kimi no te rapu no I te take tahuru no nā rangi tūhā. Whakaia ki ari te uhi, wero, tau mai te Māori, haumi e, hui e, tai, kia ora tata.
Thank you. Meeting notices. Welcome councillors, staff, presenters and members of the public, either present or online, and those watching at a later date. Council briefings are recorded. Public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to being broadcast. In case of emergency, follow the building wardens to the nearest exit. The meeting point is across the road at Peace Park, just behind me. Bathroom facilities are located opposite the chamber foyer entrance. It's a bit of an agenda for the day. We're starting with the ePMO overview and progress update. ePMO standing for Enterprise Project Management Office. So I'll leave it up to Lainey and the girls. Thank you, Lainey.
Morena tātou. Thank you for allowing us to present this work to you this morning. It's a really exciting milestone to reach. So I'll just ask you to cast your mind back to 2023, where a project plan was brought to you outlining the need for a more rigorous approach to project management, and there was quite an in-depth study carried out at the time by Laura Stewart and Walter in conjunction with Stephen as then General Manager, and it was identified that project management was a real opportunity for Council to optimise its capabilities and bring more efficiencies to all of the work that we do so that our communities might benefit. And so the project plan was approved, and then in July last year, around the time when the LTP was adopted, the position for ePMO manager was created. And this morning, I'm really, really pleased to introduce to you Elena Moore, who has been now in that role for just over a year, and she has brought an entirely fresh way of doing things to Council. So today is around updating you on the difference that is making to our work programme and how we manage it, and the exciting progress that she's made. We also have John Kim online. John is with Exco Partners, who are the provider of the software that we've been trialling and that we are rolling into, that we're implementing internally behind the scenes, and he will be leading us later through a demonstration of that software using our own data. So it has been a huge amount of work behind the scenes, just getting our data up to date with how we track projects, how we report projects, and at the end of next month, so I think it's the 28th of August, the Finance and Performance Committee, you will then see the results of that. We're going to bring to you a template for how we report particularly our key projects and programs of work going forward, so that you have better consistency, so that you understand how we're going to be reporting things going forward in a way that hopefully makes it easier for you to make really important decisions for our big community projects. So I'll hand over in a moment to Elena, but I just wanted to really just invite you to welcome her as well, because this is her first time presenting to Council. She's a powerhouse of energy behind the scenes, and so she's got an exciting presentation to share with you today. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and Sherry Ann, thank you for being here as well. Sherry Ann has been very, very close to Elena in trialling and testing some of the processes in our project management, and particularly within the digital services PMO, which has been one of the kind of test sites for this work. And so Sherry Ann is going to share with you the difference it's made to her work. But that will kind of come and go as we go through. So please just pause at any moment, ask questions, and thank you. Elena, over to you.
Cool. Morena e te iwi. So yeah, I'm Elena Moore. Deja vu is a funny thing. So I started this time last year 2 or 3 weeks into the job. And I remember sitting outside that very room, and one of my colleagues said, yeah, go sneak in. And I wanted to just sneak in, sit behind in the public gallery, going unnoticed. And at the time, it was the Finance and Performance Committee. And I snuck in, but that wasn't the case. Councillor Imick spotted me with her sharp eye, and that's when I was first introduced to some of you. So why I wanted to sit in and just be a fly on the wall that day is just to really understand what was important to you. You know, what were the kind of decisions that you were up against? And that day, it was pretty evident. There was a focus on cost savings. There was some scrutiny around capital carryovers to our former CFO. And most importantly, there was a desire for visibility and accountability. So my goal today is just to give you some confidence about what you endorsed back in 2023, that we're delivering upon that ePMO plan, and really define the need for clear, better delivery, using funds wisely, and providing value to our communities. Cool. So this is a short briefing designed to give you a clear picture of the work underway, why it matters, and the value that it's already delivering, which is pretty exciting. So we'll go back to the context. What is an ePMO? Because you're probably wondering what that is and why does it matter? And the journey so far, so where we've come from. So I really had to take time to learn where we've come from, learn our lessons to know where we're going. The progress, so that's the good part, what we've achieved so far, and what the future outlooks look, what this means for councils and our communities, and the next steps. Cool. So what is an ePMO and why do we need it? So in 2023, you approved a project plan for the ePMO, and here's why. So times are tough for councils at the moment. You're in the midst of natural disasters, economic constraints, and the pressure has never been greater. I can imagine that you've been faced with some pretty tough decisions. So as things change around us, that's constant. We need to be able to plan, deliver effectively, and be able to pivot quickly when we need to. The ePMO helps us to do that by bringing consistency, visibility, and alignment to how we work. Cool. So what is an ePMO and why do we need it? So ePMO stands for Enterprise Project Management Office. And when I first started, to be honest, our staff didn't resonate with that term. It's an industry term. So what we did is we asked them what would resonate with them. And that's where the word aratakinga comes in. It means to lead the way. And that means that we start this journey with our staff. They're a part of it and they start to build it. So in industry terms, it's basically a strategic sitting function. It looks at the whole organisation, how we plan, deliver projects in a smart and a more consistent way. It helps us ensure that we are choosing the right things because we cannot do everything. We have limited resources and we need to ensure we get better value from every project so we deliver what matters most to our communities. On the other side, you'll see a PMO. So the PMO helps bring all that together. The key difference here is they focus on delivery and getting that consistency across our project management. So this slide in your pack, it was previously called current state, but as we looked at that, it's not our current state anymore. We've done heaps of work to really get to the future state that we want. But if we talk about this really briefly, you can see strategy in the middle. Sometimes those lines are strongly connected and sometimes they're loosely connected. You can see different types of tool sets. So for when we track our projects, we've been using many different tools in the past. And when that comes to transparency and visibility, it's very hard to get the true picture of what's going on. And some of the naming titles and in this picture, you can see it's called Project X and Project B. Our naming conventions have been very hard to really define those projects, and it's made it very confusing. So this is a past date. We're very good at delivering projects, and that's thanks to this dedication and support of our staff. Next slide. Cool, so the timeline. If we start in 2020, that's when our health check confirmed what we already knew, that project delivery was a real risk. From there, in the next LTP, an ePMO resource was approved, and then we began our journey to better delivery. 2023 in particular is when the business plan provided visibility across our total work, and the ePMO plan was approved. In July 2024, I started as ePMO manager, and I really took time to really learn on the journey that we've been, to know where we're going to go, and really listen to our staff and what the troubles that they were facing to really devise a plan forward. And that's where the Aratakinga program came forward, and it's our work to transformation. So Aratakinga, this is where it gets good. So we've developed a framework, and I'd like to... I'm just going to get Lainey and Sherry Ann to pass it around, but as I'm doing so, I just want to talk about this framework and why it's so important. So in the previous picture, you saw many different ways of working, and that's because our staff had to figure out different templates, different processes of working, because there was not a united way to work. In these handbooks, you can see a pretty robust framework that we've got for our project delivery. It has to start from concept, when the projects come in the funnel, right to when they close out, and there has to be a consistent way of doing that. What that does is if we're connecting all our kind of business partnering groups in the business, such as strategic commodity team, comms, procurement, and many others, it means that no step is missed and that we are on the line to consistency. There is heaps of risk in terms of consistency, like reputation, but if we've got a unique way of doing things, it means that we mitigate those risks. The next one, as you can see on the right-hand side, is pathways. So many of our staff have to lead projects on top of their BAU. This means that we have to use this framework to educate them and develop their pathway to project leadership so they can deliver projects confidently. Technology is evolving every day, and we need to keep up the play with technology. What it does is it connects all those disparate systems that you saw on the previous slide into one system. That one system, alongside framework and that leadership, gives us the visibility that we need and insight to drive informed decision making. And on the right side, more importantly, is the culture. So it's the culture that our staff, our people want to be better all the time, and we are adapting a culture of accountability and continuous improvement at every step. In the middle, when these all connect, we get to project excellence. So what does the future look like? You see in this picture, you see a more connected picture. From our strategy to our priorities, that goes top down into performance. We have performance measures. It connects into our corporate planning, and then enterprise work is where the work gets done. So at the moment in the system, we've got up to 400 projects, and those are all very diverse projects. You've got digital, you've got infrastructure, you've got playgrounds, and what have you. So we need to let the diversity, embrace that diversity, but also manage those in a way that it's very consistent. So in the middle there, you can see from all that work, we're getting consistent data because we have a standardised framework where we can see, risks, issues, decisions, financials in all a consistent way. And those resources, we start to look at resources and see how much a resource can be allocated to a project, and that helps with our corporate planning. In the end, from all that consistency and alignment, we get visibility, so real-time reported, real data analytics. So we move from a real reactive approach to a proactive approach, and you see the technology stack down the bottom is very standardised and minimised. So imagine this. You as a councillor get a query from the public. How's this project doing? Is it on track? Is it on budget? You're able to open up your dashboard and get that data real time so you can answer those queries that you have. This is how it's going to help your job. Next LTP, you'll be faced with tough decisions around what we do and what we don't do. We can't do everything. Some things are going to have to fall off, but how do we prioritise those things really well?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you go back to the previous slide, look, I think that's really good because that sort of gives you a really good overview. And I'm obviously still trying to work out how it's separated from the green to the orange, you know, the functions and the data. But in the enterprise function, wouldn't one of your main titles there be your financial sustainability that would then work into that? Now, I can see that all of the green matches all of the orange, and so any one of them, like performance or planning, takes into account of all the risks, the financials, the scenarios, the KPIs and all that sort of stuff. But does it also work in reverse, that all the oranges have an effect on the green? Wouldn't you have a cross-directional one? Because the way your diagram there looks as if we look at the projects first and then work out if the financials fit into it. But it seems to me that we should look at a whole lot of stuff like capabilities of staff, financial abilities, all that sort of stuff, before we then look at what we can do as functions.
Yeah.
Or am I just getting too... does each one have, like the yellow arrows up there, should they also be in reverse as well as forward, going backwards?
Yeah, I love what you've said, because actually nothing is ever completely linear. There is always going to be feedback loops, and you're absolutely right. Some of those arrows probably should have a both directional element to them, particularly around that resources and risks in the orange section. If you think about the reporting templates that we're going to be showing you in just a couple of weeks' time, there's been a lot of focus on the risk part of that and the issues, because obviously in planning you're trying to foresee what those might be, but when you actually move into actually real-time allocating resources, risks do pop up. And so the reporting template that gets generated from the data in the orange section then helps feedback, so adjustments can be made in terms of performance and planning. So yeah, it is going to be iterative. It doesn't just flow in one direction. I think for presentation, the concept, we do need to break it down into those separate phases. But in reality, that's why the richness of the data in the orange box is so important, because those risks around, whether it's finance risk, as you've said, and the finance side of things will fit into the resources box, because it is actually about capability. Do we have sufficient funding? Do we have sufficient people? But absolutely, the risks then feed back into any adjustments that we make in the corporate planning. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. Yes, but I don't know if I agree with it. Is that, to me, and I appreciate that this is aimed towards the employees who have got their head down inside a project and they're trying to work the project, and then they have to make it work out whether it fits the risks, the decisions and the financials. So this is for the employees, but on the overall organisation, where we sit here and need to make sure the financials are met first, as well as future aspirations of the community and all that sort of stuff, that doesn't really fit our viewpoint, does it?
I would say it does, sorry, and just, I'll invite Steve to comment as well, you might have a slightly different view, but if you think back to the LTP and then the annual plan process, actually, if you had a really effective, very clear and consistent data dashboard which presents the orange, and if you're seeing those risks raised to you regularly and in a consistent format, I think that actually helps council at the strategic governance level prioritise when it comes to revising an LTP, as you have actually done. You know, and with Steve's guidance in this annual plan that we've just approved, you know, the orange parts, the risks, the issues, the communities' concerns have been factored in to revised planning and strategy. So I would say it does, but Steve, you might have another comment.
I was just going to add to that, but also say that I think you're reading the wrong thing into what the diagrams are trying to tell councillors. If you look at the orange boxes, and then if you could jump back to the in the past slide, that one. The way that we had operated without a consistent system, it meant that every orange box, the processes, the data, the capture of information was completely different depending upon where the project ended up. Individuals were doing things different from teams across the organisation were doing things differently from each other. What the two diagrams are trying to illustrate is that we're trying to move from that quite chaotic state to a more organised state and be able to report all of the orange boxes to council, which includes financials. The process of implementing this will have reverse engineering processes where financials move back into, because the systems all need to be able to talk in the green boxes, the systems all need to be able to talk to each other. And that's where the ERP is an important part of the timing of all of this work as well, because your ERP systems start to enable finances to talk to ePMO software, which Erin is going to demonstrate to you soon, and other forms of software. But actually, once we get the orange boxes all lined up and consistently sort of like even risks, some projects would have risks, some wouldn't. People would capture risks in different ways. Once we get all of that consistent and into technology-based system, that's where we can get to the real-time automation. So I think your question or how you're looking at the information is slightly different to what they're trying to illustrate. It's more about building consistency.
Great discussion, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just ask how it is that we'll prove the effectiveness of this, say, in a year or two's time?
We can show that right now.
We can already show you.
We would like to, yeah, that's exactly where we want to go, but Deputy Mayor.
Just before you do, can I ask another question? Yep. Just looking at the business as usual box, slightly different colour. So the business as usual is sometimes where things get blown out. You know, and I'll just use footpath renewals or something with our roading. So when you see your renewals and your business as usual stuff, is that part of the whole ePMO as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. Why it's in a dotted line is that we're going to consider it in the future. When I've been researching around this word enterprise work management, it just doesn't include projects. It's starting to include business as usual. And why that is because you need to see the total picture. And some of those business as usual items need to be run in as projects to have some structure. Also, when we look at resources, a component of that is business as usual too. So that builds the total picture. So I put it in a dotted line for now because it's a future consideration, maybe in a year's time, but the first focus will be on projects and programs.
Councillor Puller.
If I may, where does council approval fit I mean, we don't have to approve everything, but where does that fit in this
Yeah.
scenario?
I was actually going to mention that because, and to your point, Deputy Mayor, as well, we've begun with the really big pieces of work, and we've tried to, Erin has done an incredible job of kind of assessing the current state and seeing where the gaps are, but we haven't been able to do it all at once, and that's partly because although the project plan was approved in 23, when we came to the LTP, there were originally 3 FTE, and that was reduced to 1. And there was originally $350,000 that was reduced to less than half of that. So we can't do it all instantly. It does have to fit in with, for example, the ERP, and it's not, it's not overnight. We can't demonstrate the whole thing is working yet. We are going to talk to you about the impacts we're already seeing. In terms of going forward, council approvals and so on, obviously this is very much an operational piece of work that's behind the scenes, but that's why we've brought it today, is because it's really important that you understand what these kind of back of house processes are and why they're important for our functions. When we come to you with an annual plan budget towards the end of this year, it's possible that we as an executive will say, actually, we do need a little bit more to really make this work than we had in year 3 of the LTP originally. So, year 2. So I'm trying to think, which year are we in? We're in year 2, so yes, year 3. But yeah, absolutely, any further investment beyond what has already been approved will be coming back to you. And I think hopefully in the finance and performance committees, you'll also start to see where the value is really coming through and why it was a good decision in 2023.
So a takeaway from me, if I may, is in part of your management of this whole thing pre coming to council, is that I always looked for the real price or the real cost, so that we didn't get down the track and, oh dear, we need another bit of cash, and so then we could make a decision on a project knowing that we had to get some funding from somewhere else or whatever, but at least we had the whole picture, and I think that's really important. I think if you can take that away, that'd be great.
I couldn't agree more, because actually what this does, and the blue box on the left, is actually enables Steve and yourselves to be able to see the whole picture, all of the programs, all of the projects alongside one another, and it will almost in a very basic red, amber, green, show you where the ones that are struggling are. And to do that proactively, rather than to end up, halfway through something and go, oh gosh, we didn't resource that properly in the first place, which nobody wants to be in that situation. And it does mean that hard choices have to be made, as Edna began with, that you can't do everything. If you recognise early on that this nature of programme is going to need more resource, well, that means you actually have to stop something else. But that's exactly what this will deliver. Yeah. Oh, was there another? Oh, Andrew, Councillor Isles. Sorry, didn't see you there.
Thank you, Irina. Look, have I missed a stage? I'm just looking back to the consultation periods that we have when we go out to residents seeking consultation. How does that feed into this process, or is that at an earlier stage that I've possibly missed out?
There hasn't been public consultation for this piece of work because it's an internal operational process.
I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, when we do consult with ratepayers residents, how does that feed in to the structure that you've got before us today? I can't see where it's sort of aligned, and we so often are accused of either not following the consultation process, or not listening to the outcome, or not adapting to the outcome of a consultation process. So where would that fit into this?
Do you mean within each of the projects? So a water project or a roading, or, yeah, okay. I mean,
Whatever
it is in
it is.
there. It probably the decisions box in the orange group there. You know, obviously that, you know, that's one word, but obviously a lot of our council functions do require public consultation, and that will be factored into any decisions that are made. But it does entirely depend on the type of project that we're running. Some of them are public consultation, some of them aren't. Obviously, with LTP and annual plan processes, those are the kind of catch-all consultation processes. And come next year, when we bring you the budget for the annual plan, we anticipate that there'll be a very wide consultation process within that.
Yeah, appreciate that, Lenny. But a very recent example was the speed review and what the public had put forward as to how we ended up resolving it.
I might just jump in there. I mean, I think consultation and engagement is the stuff that occurs, you know, when the rubber hits the road and people are delivering projects. You know, here we're talking about a system that is capturing project objectives, budgets and deliverables, and enabling management and governance reporting on those. Where we're doing engagement and then feeding that into a project, you would see it pop up in places like risks issues. As Lainey said, the decision that's made, even the financials might be determined by a stakeholder engagement process. But I mean, this is effectively the mechanism to do the to provide oversight of the delivery of projects. Also, consultation comes through in the decision making for council laws. So an engagement process gathers information, and then there'd be a council paper, and the use of community consultation is in the decision-making process that councillors have around the table. This is about oversight of implementation after that decision is made. So I think consultation kind of pops up in a number of areas, probably more around the decision that is made by council, whether to proceed and how to proceed, and then it probably features things like in the risks issues and financials area scenarios, perhaps, if that's helpful.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you so much for your mahi and just the way that you're able to explain it as well, the whakapapa of it. My question really was, you know, like with most systems that are introduced and being a dashboard, it's reliant on the data that's inputted that will be of what quality the information is in there. And so in that whole process, is there an increase or on administrative issue, administration to be able to input the data as for, you know, that on staff, and also, you know, are those efficiency? Because sometimes we've seen what's happened in organisations where they've introduced that, and much of the time those who are needing to do the work on the ground are spending more time behind the computer inputting the data of the work that they're doing. So I guess I'm asking, you know, overall it looks great, it looks very valuable. I'm hoping that it will financially make us more efficient, make us be able to pinpoint things that aren't efficient so that we can save the ratepayers' money, but also making sure that our staff are supported. And is the payoff of saving money meaning that we're using that money to help pay people to administrate the system?
Yeah.
So is there a balance? Is there going to be a saving?
I think Eleanor will answer this very politely, and then I might come in with a bit more.
So the book that you see in your hand, that is the guideline of that consistency coming through. Also, you would have seen in the previous slide we used different systems. So when we were choosing a tool, the tool had to integrate with those different systems in the start. So what that might look like is a whole bunch of different tools being used in year one, and then we reduce as we learn and as we develop. So that enables them to use the tools that they're already using, and we are able to track that data. And the beauty about one plan, you're right, bad data in, bad data out. So we need to be able to build up that capability in what we see. But the beauty about the tool is, as well, is it becomes transparent. So we can see where we're lacking and which ones, which people need support. But we've got this far in the journey, it is going to need to be resourced to help that journey. And in the state of being really transparent, this isn't an overnight journey. It's about a 5-year journey to maturity. But the positive thing is that we're already 1 year in. So we've got another year where it still becomes a program of work, and then it transitions into PAU. And then we see this culture maybe in year 5 where that maturity gets, we're never going to be a 10 because that would be so much to cost to keep that up. But if we can get to a 7 or 8, that's pretty good. So it's a journey.
The other piece to that, and you're absolutely right, Councillor Boynton, was that I mentioned it, that when the LTP decision was made to reduce, it has meant that Erina and I are meeting just about weekly to see how we can stretch out and eke out every part of that budget to make it as efficient as possible. And currently, she has been relying on temporary contractors to do some of the BA work, the business analyst work, to actually make sure that the data is really good quality. And having the previous conversation about planning and looking ahead, I think making sure that Erina has the right resource to do that really, really well is actually critical for the long-term success. She's been working miracles, but also we should do this really well. It's making huge difference.
Supplementary. I mean, it looks like in terms of investment, I suppose what I'm really getting to is wanting to be able to have an idea or strong idea of the dollar value in savings from what previously may have been inefficiencies, so that we have something to justify the investment, because we understand that the business of council, there's areas in which people see there's wastage or things are being doubled up or however that is. If this system means that we are better efficient and it positions us well, not only as an organisation but with our communities and also too with the current government in terms of agencies that we deal with, because there are regulations coming in on how efficient we are. What's that dollar value, and does that come out in this?
Erina and Lainey have been quite polite, but I'm going to be really blunt. Every report we prepare is manual. The business plan, the finance and performance reports, the financial reports, those infrastructure dashboards, they require staff members to go in, get a piece of data, copy it, paste it, put it into a report, write up the information. Sometimes the number transfer is wrong. It requires a huge and exhausting amount of work, because everything we report to you is currently manual as a council. I think you enjoy the reports. I certainly do, and I know that the ELT does, particularly the business plan reports where we're looking quarterly at risk. But when I go through this orange box, all the business plan is really giving us a view of is progress and a little bit on risks, because we're starting to do those consistently. I don't know the dollar value, and I don't think Erina and Lainey would know the dollar value, but what we do know is that by moving to a system where we're able to use technology, and we're also changing the way people work, so there is less paper-based, Excel spreadsheet-based work, and people are working through a system like OnePlan, which you're going to get a demonstration of in a moment. will make us more efficient, because through the touch of a button you'll be able to grab and manipulate data, and also with the emergence of AI, the ability to get insights without people having to sit in a room will just become a lot more efficient and easier. So in some ways I think with technology, people often ask for, well, how much are we going to save? I know we went through that question with the ERP process as well. It's very, very hard to put a dollar value on it, but what I can say is everything that we do at the moment is manual, and what we want to do is move into a technology-based system where we're able to do things at the push of a button. It will make us more efficient.
I'm wondering if there's no need to continue with the presentation, because I suspect some of our questions are already asked.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. So the things that I'm kind of really proud of are the most memorable moments. In the right-hand picture, that was our first project management training based on the book right in front of you. What we did differently there is we invited iwi to come along with that journey. So we've got Ngāti Rangitihi, Ngāti Whare, and Ngai Tūhoi. Why they were invited is because we connect with them on projects a lot. So as we're on a journey to better project management journey, they might like to come along with us. And if we have a deeper understanding of each other, that might help mitigate project risks in the future. So that was a good day. It was well received. One of the iwi respondents said, not only did I learn project management skills to help me in my mahi, but I also had a deeper understanding of the types of projects council does and the functions that they deliver. So that was really quite moving. On the right, our left-hand picture, this is Linda and the tourism team. So they're putting that practice into place. In the project management training, there's a thing called the Right Track Workshop. So Linda was preparing for one of the tourism events, and what they learned by going for a structured process is, a part of that process is thinking about your stakeholders. In the past, they might have just done this kind of very briefly or maybe missed the step at all. So what they learned there is they defined one iwi, but then they go, hang on, what about the rest? How are we going to consult with them? So that's just aratakia in action. And this is how we know that it's working well, because it's showing the results, and that was one of the questions earlier before. Also, in the staff and latest staff engagement survey, it showed a 10% increase in effective project management techniques. So it was one of the biggest improvements across the board. And that last survey was done in 2024, so already making progress. Also, our project management survey had an 82% response rate, so that's a clear sign that our people want change and they're ready to be a part of it. Cool, we'll go on to the next slide. So we've talked a lot and it looks really good on the slides, but let's see it in action. So we've invited John Kim from Exco Partners, and he's going to show you. And one thing I just want you to know about what we've done it with limited resource, so it's not complete. But imagine if it will be complete, what it can show. So I'll hand over to John.
Thank you, Irina. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to start sharing my screen and ensure that you guys can see that. Yeah, all right. So it looks like it's coming out there. So this is the tool that has been mentioned a couple of times during this presentation. It's called OnePlan, and OnePlan is effectively a portfolio and project management tool. It's really aimed at, one, helping organizations execute projects in a consistent manner. And I guess more importantly, what the ePMO is aiming to do, which is to tie that back to a strategy in order to give the council the confidence that it can deliver on its promise to its residents, right? I'm not going to be kicking around. I know I have, about 10 minutes to do this initial demonstration. And what you're looking at here, you can see a rich tapestry already There are more than 400 projects already in the system that effectively the ePMO has been trialing and putting in. Without going into a great amount of detail, there's a lot of the orange column that you saw earlier. So risks, issues, financials, planning, all that data, which has to be done anyway when you are managing projects, is able to be entered in an easy and consistent fashion here in one plan. But more importantly, for anyone who wants to have an easy view of where projects are, they can come into the system and look at that without having to ask someone to provide that information. So here, for example, we've got a portfolio called transport, and we've got a number of projects underneath it, which again is based on the data that the council have. So these are projects, these are real projects that you guys are today. And quite quickly on the right hand side, you can start to see that health tracking as well. What's important as well is, that information that's captured here stays in the system regardless of whether that project goes on hold or is cancelled due to some of the difficult decisions you have to make from a financial constraint, right? And that's already showing you here, for example, some of these projects have been effectively put on hold. So this is an example of some of the high-level information you can see against projects. Now, I know it's not very visual and it's very hard to make 400 plus records look visual. But effectively, one of the things that you can do is you can start to visualize some of this high-level information anyway, in some of the key features that you can see here. So I'm just going to go to this roadmap, for example. Again, I'm still kind of focusing on the execution, but here you have effectively a more visual roadmap type view of the projects that are currently ongoing at the council. And it can be grouped, sorted, or filtered to really provide you a level of clarity. And again, think of this as real-time information. As users start using the system a bit more, this information will be always up to date. So think of the ability to see all your projects in one spot, and the ability to then also quickly hone in on the ones that look like they may need a bit of help. So for example, the ones that have been flagged as amber or red. Again, we're just in the very early stages of using the tool, but you can already start to see some of the value that you can get out of this. This can even include things like, when you get to the next level, include the dependencies or the relationships between your projects. So if your projects have a relation to another, that can be visually brought out through this tool as well. So that's just in execution, right? So think about the annual planning or LTP cycle for the council. Now, this tool also captures ideas, and think about, if we have 400 in-flight projects, how many ideas that you would typically have in a given year. I think that number is quite frightening. Now, this tool also helps provide clarity or data to make decisions about where to invest the limited funds that you guys have. For taking into account ideas, which are effectively projects which haven't happened yet, and taking into account that you are currently spending money against in-flight projects. So the tool also helps do that. So that's, again, now tying back to that green column or the strategy piece, right? So I'm going to click here and show you an example of that. So I've taken an example where, again, it's a little bit and a little bit small as well for those who are seeing in person. But here in this particular portfolio optimization or planning tool, this is where you can see, well, if we tried to do all our projects, both in flight and new, what would that cost the council? So here in this example, we can see at the top, there's 168. In this particular example, there's 168 projects that we're aiming to do in a particular given period. And that's going to cost us 42. It's a bit small at the top there, but 41.5 million New Zealand dollars. And maybe that's too much. Maybe that's not something that we can aim for. We do know their alignment to strategy. So as you can see here, there's a score that the tool can provide based on the information that's entered. Again, we've done some examples here with half a dozen different ideas and projects to show you, well, these are the ones that are coming up as really hitting the mark and aligning to what the council is aiming to do. That can also be that can be then aligned with the cost of the project. So you can see the budget column here. So knowing that we can't do too much or we can't do everything is the first step. The second step is to then try and pick the right mix, the right value of projects to then proceed with. So that's where you can start to do things in this tool. For example, you can start to model what happens if you take projects out or add projects in. All right. These models and scenarios can be saved. For example, if you were aiming to spend $20 million in a year, we can see what that would look like. So in this example, we've only taken 15 projects out. But again, we've taken 15 projects out which are lower in their alignment to the strategic value to the council and a high cost. So you can see how we've removed quickly $20 million from the spend that we would do. So the tool allows you to quickly see what the right mix of projects would be to proceed with and help you make that data-driven decisions. Again, if you think about ideas which are, again, projects which haven't happened, and also projects which are in flight, you're not asking people to provide this data for you to be able to do this animal planning. And also you're saving the time where that data might be out of date the moment you get it to do that future planning. You can save a number of these, models or scenarios to really try and give you those different data decision points. So as you see here, here's an example of where potentially, again, this is probably a more extreme one where you go, well, if we only do the projects which are highly aligned to what we're trying to achieve. In this really extreme example, only 12 projects really make the cut to a spend of $11.8 million, and yet 156 that you see in the out category here. These are projects that we probably want to really magnify what value they're providing to the council before we bring them back in. This is just based on the data that's in at the moment. When you then get even more information, so information that feeds into your resourcing, do we have enough resources or do we have enough financials? That really unlocks the power of the tool to say, not just what if we decide to pause or cancel a project, also what happens if we decide to delay a project. That comes with a little bit more information that we have at the moment. But then you can not just see what happens when a project is put off for a year. You can see if you just delay it for 3 or 6 months, what that does to the cash flow of the council as well. So look, we really just scratch the tip of the iceberg in terms of capability. But I was just hoping to give you a very brief and high-level overview of the system. I'm going to pass back to Erina, unless Erina wants me to show anything else.
No, thank you, John. I guess the power in this is a scenario tool, is that you get to see, what sort of things come into the LTP and you get to measure it against the resourcing. And then if you stagger that, as you see, John staggered some of those projects maybe a year or months later, the effect that it has on the financial figures. Okay, so even that roadmap, he saw a straight line, and if he went down that line in that roadmap view, you will see there's a whole bunch going on at once, and that's why we're feeling so overloaded. But what happens if we put better planning into the mix and stagger our delivery and the impact that it has on the financial figures and potentially even those capital carryovers?
So just before, I've only got one more slide really, which is just to kind of get some feedback, and I just wanted to pause there just for 30 seconds. I know we're running quickly out of time. Sherry-Ann has been using this tool within the Digital Services PMO, and I'm sure if you're interested in hearing from her direct experience of actually using the tool already. But also, do any of you have any kind of instant reactions to seeing the live demo from John while we have John with us today?
Through you, Mr Chair. Yeah, thank you very much, ladies, and thank you, John, as well for your presentation. Look, it makes complete sense to get all this electronically digitised and, you know, to track all our projects. I'm probably a little bit like some of the other councillors, still not sure, and I know we can't wait for 5 years to start seeing some financial efficiencies, but like, for example, on one of the first slides where it said budget at risk in red. So at what point do you decide to pause it because it's probably already way at risk if it's over its budget? Do you then take something from another project, or do we just add more on? Because that's what we've been doing already, is reactive stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a conversation that the data enables us to have that rich conversation, both at ELT, but also with yourselves. So particularly those key projects, and we didn't get time today, but there is actually another view where you can see the 15 or 16 that are currently tagged as kind of key projects for council because they have high community interest or because they're high financial value and so on. So it does depend a little bit on whether the red flag then triggers a wider conversation at this table, or whether it's something that within, for example, as GM Strategy and Growth, I have a project that might be looking like it's going to go over the initial budget, but I have another one here who's coming in under, and if it's sort of fairly insignificant, you know, you can kind of ensure that the overall envelope is still intact. So it does depend on the level, but absolutely that's what the tool is designed to enable.
Thank you.
And there's still a bit to so we've got the framework, but we need to define the governance across those 400 items. So you can still govern over those 400 items. It's grouped into portfolios of work. So we need to define what those portfolios look like. We can't align that to the LTP, I don't think. It wouldn't be efficient to do that because there's 17 groups and maybe 1 or 2 projects underneath them. And we've got natural groupings such as the digital services team. At the start, they had maybe 50 projects. So it's looking at that. So what that means is we have to look at the reporting and how that comes up to you. So you get that consolidated view, but you don't have 400 individual project management plans. And then based on there, you'll be able to see how those portfolios are running to strategy, achieving financials, and what are the high risks at a very high level where you need to be.
So it would be helpful for us to hear other feedback. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, that's really helpful. We did have some questions, but I think, you know, you're already getting there. You know, what do you think? Do you have any questions for John? What's your sense on how this might help you with that governance level decision making?
I remain sceptical. Assertions that things will happen are not proof that anything will happen. You put my question off. This country's productivity has been dropping for the last 20 years, and we've got a plethora of new tools that have come along. So the question is, you know, is it really going to help us to be more efficient, and how we're going to efficient and productive, and how are we going to measure it against what? You know, I guess it's not things like what are the metrics, how many, and some of them are up there, but I'm not so sure. The proof.
Is it a question or just something for us to take away and think about? Oh, did I tried to answer that question earlier by saying we can't quantify what the efficiency will be, but actually when you look at it, you do sit there and go, yeah, it just feels like there will be an efficiency, much like with the ERP system. As I said, everything we do at the moment is manual. The business planning process is manual. The quarterly project reports are manual. The finance reporting everything is manual. If you're digitising it, then actually the saving is probably in the manual process of doing reporting. Delivery of projects, there might be some efficiencies. Probably it'll be more around effectiveness and better resource planning and avoiding bottlenecks, so the resource planning will be better. So you might get some more effectiveness around project delivery, but I think the efficiency for this sort of stuff is probably sitting back towards where we're spending a lot of manual time on reporting. The other thing too about access to technology and things, new technologies come out, we just absorb them as societies, and then we sort of forget about what things used to be like. We never really had that much access to weather data, but we'd be checking the weather app on our phone now several times a day, wouldn't we? And we like having access to that, and we know it helps us make better decisions. We just know it does. But actually, again, trying to quantify that and define it and put it into a box is quite difficult.
I'll chip in.
So you
Can
have
I
a
just
feeling,
ask
is what you're
Sherry Ann?
saying.
I'd love to just hear a statement from Sherry Ann about the difference this is making to her work since Erin has
Can I
started.
just go back to that? So
Oh,
the
okay.
CE, I haven't finished. The CE
All right.
has got a feeling, and a feeling isn't proof of anything. So the answer to my question is, will we ever be able to prove it? And have we established good baseline data to compare against?
Yeah, we never had a baseline. When I
Well,
first
then how, then we,
When I first started, I couldn't find out where our projects were. I couldn't give you confidence that it was, 368 projects, because they weren't in one place. I had to find them everywhere. So now they're in one place, so that's even a huge improvement to where we were. And now we've got a baseline. Start to build that baseline.
I've got an example as well, before Sherry Ann tells us her real-life example. When I first arrived at this council, there was no list of what all our projects were. You had no idea. You could not look across the organisation and go, these are all the things that we're doing. You had to go out and manually ask each team, and even when you did that, then the team manager would have to go to their individual staff and collect all the information. But actually just that process of developing a business plan and putting that into a single system has enabled us to have full organisational visibility. But I don't know how to quantify the efficiency from that. I think that's the challenge.
so just to remind us, what is the total cost of this tool that we will eventually get? What do you anticipate it to be? And what would you expect the payback time to be? I mean, we're making an investment in a tool,
So if it's okay with you, we will bring that to you in the committee in 3 weeks' time, 28th of August, because you're going to get an update to the project plan that was signed off in 2023 and basically a hard number on what's been spent so far and what's required. We're not asking you for more resource at this point, just to be clear. We're just hoping to bring your confidence up. But can we just hear from Sherry Ann, because it does respond partly to your point. It's not quantitative evidence, but I believe it's qualitative evidence.
Kia ora, everyone. So in digital services, we've also been on a journey to increase our maturity in our project space. That has aligned beautifully for Irana coming on board and doing that across the organisation too. So for not only the tool, but also the general increase in maturity in the organisation for understanding our projects best run and working across the business to ensure that we're engaging all of the right people at the right times has really made a difference for us in digital. So we're learning about projects earlier, and that's really helped with delivering them to a higher standard. For the tool, so we were part of the initial pilot for One Plan with the ePMO, and that enabled us to do a similar thing, go across our business unit and find out what projects people were working on, the ones that people knew that were kind of coming up, or the ones they were hearing about around the business, and capture them in one place so we knew what was out there. And also so we can forward plan and know, okay, someone in the business is going to be installing a street light, and we can put a Wi-Fi unit on it, those kind of things, so we can actually see what's coming up down the pipeline. It's enabled us to do a roadmap so we can plan our own projects, but Another area that we didn't see in here, but another area that's been very valuable for us is it's got a resource management area. So for all of the projects that are in the system, we can allocate our resources to them. We can allocate future resources without a name. It can just be a position or a role. But we can put, so one project we've got, so for example, 5 projects in there that are active at the moment, and we can line up who's against those projects. So we can see from a person, a people point of view, how many projects is that person actually working on? Is it sustainable for them? And move things around if we need to. So having the ability to do that for us has made a massive difference, not only to our effectiveness, we're not jumping from thing to thing, but also for our people too. So it's been really good. And the whole journey that we've been going on so far and bringing the organisation along to really understand the most effective way to do projects have been amazing. So.
And can I just note that partly as a result of this collaboration, Sherry-Ann was recently a finalist at the Project Management Institute Awards for Emerging Project Manager. So thank you, Sherry-Ann, for jumping into this.
John's got it. You go first, John. You've been waiting.
In answer to your question, I support where you're going, because if you don't try it, you don't know. And also, we were also talking about being smarter, and this is one of those avenues to be smart. And the fact that you can know where a project is in real time, not after the horse has bolted, is really important. So there's real advantages there. I'm not sure that you're going to see dollars roll out straight away, Councillor Boylan, but I think it'll be subtle stuff. And if you can make easier and efficient for staff, then it's got to be a benefit. So you keep going.
Tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou. Absolutely, this is exciting stuff, what you've presented to us, because we're looking at efficiency of time. In time is of the essence. You see, in Te Ao Māori, we have the saying, ki mua ki muri. If the back is going, if the front is going well, so is the back. And we need to bring our staff forward, because not only are we getting knocked at the front, we absolutely know our staffers too. So if this can bring something forward for all of us in efficiency of time, it will be well supported. It will be well supported. I know what a messy laptop looks like. When you can't find stuff, when you need to find stuff, and that just builds frustration. What you've delivered today is really great. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation today. I think it's been really valuable to see where we've got to and where we're getting to and where we're going. I think there's been some good questions raised around the kind of cost benefit, and so I look forward to the report to articulate. And I agree with, I think, Councillor Puller, that it may be difficult to give really clear quantitative analysis on that, but I think just a clear articulation of cost benefits will be quite useful for us. Having said that, what I see is that, first of all, this will support better delivery of our projects, and I think that's really critical. We have had a history of not being able to deliver a lot of projects. Councils tend to be seen as going over time and over budget and under delivering, and I think this is really going to help us get in the right place in terms of delivery. It seems like it's going to be easier for staff to input and access information, and I think that's really critical. I think it will give us as governors a bit more visibility about what's going on, and that's really important, because it can be very hard sitting at this table to really see what's going on in the organisation. I think it's going to really help us with that. And what that leads to, for me, I hope, is an ability for us as governors to to exercise oversight and governance around our priorities and linking what we do to the strategic objectives which we've set out, which need an update because the context has changed quite a lot since the last time we went through that exercise. As was said, if we're going to put more resources, if we're going to do this project or take on a new project, we have to be clear what we're going to drop and what we're not going to do. And we have to get much better, I think, at that kind of prioritisation. For me, setting out strategic priorities is about that. This is as much about what we don't do as what we do. And so I hope this will really help us in that.
Councillor Dennis? Nothing?
I will make mentions, and you called my name. Look, I'm never one for spending big money, but I think this will save money. And so I take account of what our CE said, is that when he joined, you couldn't actually work out who was doing what projects were on the board. And that live example there just sold it for me, is that really for the staff to be efficient and work out efficient finances and things like that, that gives you, or everyone in the organisation, more knowledge on how to do things. So, thank you.
Kia ora, yes, I support what our other members have also said around efficiencies. I look forward to those who will be doing the LTP not to have to go through A3 printouts of Excel spreadsheets, and pages and pages of that. And even with that, not even know what stage or what other scenarios could happen with those projects. I think that in itself is a benefit in terms of the efficiency of decision making. And that's a huge improvement, because that obviously informs our strategic direction, which will then dictate back into the projects. I also see that it will be beneficial if we have to pivot, because there's either policy or product changes from central government, which means that we have to, quickly change, or that we can connect a decision to what the actual cost will be, but we can be efficient in planning what happens with that, instead of we get one piece of information here, then there's no connection, and then there's outrage about why is this stopped. I think drawing those lines of connection is going to be of huge benefit for governance level, not only for our accountability, but also so that we can be proactive. We can be proactive if we are facing challenges, whether it be from central government, but also from our communities. And I see efficiencies in governance. I also see efficiency in operation. Thank you for your mahi. Awesome mahi.
Kia ora, thank you for this presentation. It looks like these projects, as you said, Steve, it's a jungle, and you're organising that, and we're heading in the right direction. And I'm certainly I'm an advocate for hearing from those who are at the coalface. So thank you for giving us that. And I'd like to hear from those on the ground who are actually living it and having to use this. John, thank you for your presentation. And I'm in support of this. It's great work. So thank you, Arana, and your team. I'm here.
Yeah, no, sorry, Your Worship.
Oh, yeah, you go.
Yeah, my question was actually, I'm in supportive of it, and I do believe there will be realised and unrealised benefits across the organisation. My question is this being trialled or utilised with any other councils in New Zealand? Or is this like a project management system that hasn't been in local government yet?
Yeah, so John might be able to jump in here, but from my understanding, I've tried many project management systems. And the beauty about this system, we had to think about our needs with those different systems that we're using and the integration. And this is one of those systems that was top of the mark. We did look at 3 others. But in the pilot, we had to be extra sure we negotiated from a 3-month trial to about a 90-day trial, just to get our data in the system, make sure it's fit for purpose, and that's what we did there. And another point about the tool is that it's customisable. We don't have to go back to John, I'm sure he'd love us to, but we can customise it ourselves, any field. So thinking about the data, we want to capture what iwi each project touches on, we can create a field for that. And that's very powerful when it comes in terms of the reporting. So those were the two biggest factors when choosing the tool. Because we can't spend investment, it's going to be difficult getting the next lot of investment, I can see. So we've got to think outside the square, and being able to do that ourselves is one of the biggest benefits, especially in the ever-changing times that we face. We don't know about other councils, Like we don't know about other councils in New Zealand. I think we'll be one of the first ones. John might be able to step in here, but a lot of Australian councils are going on plan.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Look, I think there's the beauty of one plan, as Irina said, is that a lot of people can sort of figure it themselves. So people who are a bit mature in project portfolio management find it to be a very intuitive tool. So we implement in Australia and New Zealand, but we don't have visibility to all one plan customers. We've been using a local council here in Melbourne. So we're a Melbourne-based consulting organization. And it's kind of attempted to help give you some guidance of what other local councils have done. I won't go into too much detail, but we're very proud of that customer. I think one of the things they talked about was, that the PMO manager there was able to answer how much a project costs about 3 or 4 years ago. There was a freedom of information request, and he answered it in 5 minutes. He answered it before the finance tool could answer it. And we were really proud of that. And they use the tool now, they use it themselves. They're about 3 or 4 years into it. All their annual planning goes through that. There's a very strong tie-in with the finance system there, and they basically self-manage it. It's quite a popular product at the different levels of government here in Australia, especially state and local council. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, John. Just in my experience, councils say they have an ePMO, but when you dig down deep into it, what you find is that they don't. What they have is a very small PMO that just has oversight of their large spend capital projects mostly. My question to trip them up is I ask them, so you include your annual plan, project plan in that? They go, well, that's not a project. And I say, well, yes, it is. It's an operational project, not a capital one. So what I've found is that actually councils will have small PMOs that just do high spend capital projects, but what we're actually trying to do, we don't have that, but what we're actually trying to do is that plus have a system that captures all of our projects. So actually we have just got better oversight, and we're able to do all of those benefits like resource planning, scenario planning across the whole organisation rather than just a very small part of it. So that's one nuanced difference I noticed too with councils. And I haven't come across a council that has a system that is capturing all of its projects yet.
So that leaves me, who remains to be convinced, but my issue of proofs remains. Faith and feelings don't do it for me. But that might be found in some of these sort of testimonials, right? Councils, we can't point to a council that can do the before and after thing, but we might be able to find some sort of firms that, and perhaps you can hunt around for some of those, and they can definitively show that their investment in this tool has yielded whatever productivity or efficiency. So that's me. Thank you, ladies, and we'll break for morning tea. Everybody, the next item, 4.2 is the Matata Wastewater Project. And are you leading it out, Nick? Yep.
I am, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will get underway, and look, apologies if I look at my phone, there's a fair bit of rain overnight, so we're just keeping an eye on how things are looking out there. But I'll get underway. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Morning, everyone. So, purpose of today is to really give a bit of an overview of the work that's been undertaken on the Matata Wastewater Project. We do have some options that we will talk to, and it's really to seek a bit of a steer ahead of the IPC meeting on the 4th of September. We will be looking at bringing a paper, but we really wanted to have a conversation with the members here about where we've got to, and in particular what the options are that we've narrowed it down to. So bit of context to this, I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. It's been an ongoing project for council for around 20 years in various forms, and since the 2021 LTP has been identified as a priority project for council. That's this iteration of it. We've undertaken options analysis, options assessment with our technical team, both of the type of treatment and the reticulation systems, and noting that really reticulation is the most effective option for enabling growth, supporting growth. Culturally, it's very important. And a note that Ngāti Rangatihi, through their natural resources settlement, have the Te Rawara Awa Restoration Strategy Group, which are looking at improving the water quality in the catchment there. And also, Matata is identified as a confirmed reticulation zone by the Regional Council. If it wasn't to go ahead, then that would need to change through a plan change process, become a maintenance zone, which would put on different requirements or more onerous requirements for the current septic systems. Since, over the course of the project, there have been a few changes in assumptions. When we first looked at it a few years ago now, we were looking at, how do you future-proof it? What could growth look like there? And that's where there's 260 homes as sort of an initial growth or low growth. We thought, 400 homes would be sort of what you do as a baseline to, allow some development. Longer term, you could look at around 800, and then beyond that, long term, maybe up to 1,200 homes is what you would look at future-proofing it for. Since then, it went through the spatial plan process, and you may recall through the spatial plan we had a bit of a deeper dive and came up with an option there of up to 1,500 homes could be accommodated, or it could grow to 1,500 homes, and that was identified as an early growth option. However, following some engagement with the community and others, the spatial plan that was adopted changed that somewhat, and so we're now looking at Awakeri as the next growth area. But within Matata, there is a fairly large residential zone that could accommodate up to about 600 to 700 homes without any plan change, subject to having a reticulated wastewater. And beyond that, there may be growth further to the east. Within the existing residential zone, there aren't, it's relatively low hazard. It's low risk for landslides, most of it, and it's outside of any active fault zones. Further to the east, there are some risk analysis that need to be taken, but that's seen as a longer term growth option. Certainly short term, provided there was sufficient infrastructure, then growth could be up to about 700. So, that's quite an important point, and that is included in the spatial plan. Yes, that's included in the spatial plan. Yeah. So we've also seen the proposed wastewater standards come out, and we've analysed what that could mean, noting that those haven't been adopted, they are proposed, and we're waiting to see what happens with those. Given the type of discharge that we're looking at, and this is something that we've worked through with the co-design group, it's probably not going to make a big difference in terms of the type of discharge. And there's also the water strategy, which is looking at, what's a broader strategy for our potable water and wastewater in particular, and how could different options integrate. At this stage, Edgecombe, which is relatively close, remains a standalone option, but potentially in the longer term it could join up with either going west or east, but that's still to be determined. But that is a consideration as well. So at a high level, there's three key options that we're looking at, or three options. One is if it was to remain a maintenance zone, what that would mean for Matata. That would require a plan change led by the regional council. It's probably important to note there that the status quo isn't really an option. It would have to change, both in terms of a policy sense that the regional council operate, and through that process they would look at what that would mean for maintenance regimes or otherwise of existing septic tanks, what ones would have to be replaced. There would be a process they go through. We've had a look at what we think it means based on the existing on-site effluent treatment plant plan that the regional council run, and what guidelines or what standards they point towards. But there would be a process to go through, and we expect that a number of septic tanks will either have to be replaced or have other implications that would be worked through in that process. Option two, which is what we looked at, and that was sort of an option that we were looking very seriously at and presented to council about a year ago. That was for what we'd call a high quality treatment system, similar to what's at Lake Rotuiti, the Rotuiti-Rotuma scheme, kind of advanced activated sludge, sort of a U-Butte option, I guess. What's the best that you could achieve? The growth assumption underpinning that, because it does have a bit more cost, was that you could have, it would be a larger population would be served, and therefore you get economies of scale that come with that. Since then, we've had a look at what a more moderate scale of plant would look like. So what would still achieve a suitable level of treatment, but actually would be a more modest cost, and may actually meet what is now in the spatial plan in terms of those options. So that's sort of up to 700 homes within the existing residential zone. We've also, we purchased Tahi Hill Farm last year and looked at, how could we maximise the use of that, and we'll get to that. I'll get to that soon. I'll just note, is it the one that has the error? Yeah, I'll just note at the bottom it says options 1 and 2 both meet project objectives. It's actually, sorry, we switched the options around, so it's actually 2 and 3, so that's an error. Options 2 and 3 both meet project objectives. But there was, different scale of treatment and operation. So, if you keep going, Janine, thank you. So the maintenance zone, there would be more onerous requirements on houses in there, and that would really limit growth. So probably wouldn't see much growth in the town under that option at all, and it doesn't really meet the objectives of the project. There are various implications that go into that. So there would be costs to either replace septic tank systems or and plus consent fees. New builds, if there were new builds, would need to have quite an advanced system as well, and that's if they could meet the standards of the new a new maintenance zone imposed by the regional council. So, yeah, no growth and wouldn't meet the aspirations of iwi out there either. Okay. So there are some, you know, pros and cons, opportunities, obstacles. The maintenance zone does mean less cost to council. It's all imposed on the homeowners. It would mean that, things like the growth opportunities in the spatial plan wouldn't be realised, and it would, the aspirations of the Tarawera Awa Restoration Strategy Group and iwi out there would also not be met by that. So there are a few obstacles.
For you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about, so if this option was considered and the houses already have got septic tanks dug down under, and if they had to replace them, do they dig that out and put a new one in, or they just put another one in? Like, is there enough space for all of that?
It would be probably a site by site assessment. I would say what's the most.
Some might not even be able to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
At the moment, they're all 1,000 square.
Well. Yeah.
I think you find, like in Nesbitt Street, there's a group of 3 units on 1 quarter-acre section. They would not have any space at all. There's quite a few places by each creek, stream, and they're already really close to the stream, and so you would have to put them where the other ones was to get them further away from the stream.
Yeah, they have to, under the rules of the regional council, they have to be compliant, and there are quite strict rules around the space for the disposal field. So not so much the actual tank that just holds the solids, it's all of the water that comes out of your tank and goes into your backyard and runs through your drains in a normal environment that's not sitting in groundwater. In the lower half of Matata, the majority of those drains are sitting in groundwater, and so it's mixing and then flushing out in other parts of the town and into the waterways. So under the maintenance zone, the regional council would have to make sure that they are all compliant. So even with the spend of a 20 to 30,000 upgrade, they may not be compliant with their disposal fields, just simply because of the groundwater levels and the soil conditions out there.
Supplementary, and that becomes a relationship between the homeowner and regional council. So that adds another.
It does. However, there is also, and we have sought legal advice as well. There are also local government rules around under the Building Act in terms of health and safety of communities. I would say the regional council have a particular view on whose role is what, and you will have a particular view on whose role is what. If that was an option that was what you would seek to move forward with, we would make sure that we had clear, updated legal advice on that. But the actual compliance is the regional council's responsibility. How homeowners comply would be what you'd have to work through with the regional council.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, you've alluded to it, but there's septic systems and there's septic systems. I can probably show you about a dozen different types of designs that have got, oxygenation and tertiary treatment for removal of nitrogen and phosphorus and stuff like that. So it all depends what you're talking about. And that'll also determine drain field size. But anyway, you've alluded to it here.
There's a process that would need to be worked through, led by the regional council when those plan changes.
Technology moves along in septic systems too. I mean, the ones that are there are ancient, or many of them.
So under the maintenance zone option, we would lose the $6.7 million from the Ministry of Health that wouldn't go into funding that. And through the LTP process, we did hear quite strongly from the community their aspiration was for a reticulated system. So that's that option. We'll keep going. So the other option, option 2, this was sort of a larger scale plant, and that's when we were looking at that, trying to have quite a lot of growth in the short term relative to the existing size of the community. So that's it's a really advanced plant. It's a good system. It's a really good system, but it is expensive. So it's, our estimated costs were around 31 million capex and 640 $1,000 a year OPEX. It's quite expensive to run. That's as a concept phase. We haven't done detailed design and obviously the costs that go with that, but at a high level, that's really what we would expect. But that would achieve a very high level of treatment. Most of the treatment and reduction in nutrients is done through the treatment process itself. What comes out looks like water. It's pretty clear. It's really clear, and it's disinfected as well. So that would, that is future-proofs the town. It does allow quite a lot of growth. We would be able to uplift that subsidy. It does meet iwi hapu aspirations. Aligns with community expectations, but it does come at a significant cost and an ongoing cost of both capex and opex, and it does really rely on quite a lot of growth to help fund it. So we've looked more laterally at a more moderate scale treatment option. So this is not changing what we would plan for reticulation with the step system or the disposal to land, lower irrigation, but instead of, and Hugh can probably correct me on the technical details, and apologies if I didn't introduce Hugh properly at the moment, but Hugh actually is our technical expert on wastewater on the project team. It's a more modest cost. It's not as high a level of treatment, but what it would mean is we'd rely more on the land, the grass and the soil to uptake those nutrients. So it's a real land treatment option. The land is an important part of the treatment process in this option. So it's not quite as high nutrient reduction in the treatment process, but it is cheaper. It's a cheaper option. Overall, it's not hugely cheaper because of the cost of still reticulation and other costs with putting in entirely new wastewater system, but it is still a substantive reduction. And in fact, the day one costs in terms of those 260 homes, that's less than 20 million. And in fact, once you include that Ministry of Health subsidy of 6.7, then your actual cost numbers are getting down there, and that one feels like it's within reach. It's certainly within the costs that are provided for in the long-term plan. So that more modest option is actually feels quite achievable, whereas the other option, the costs were starting to get quite up there. And we were relying in the RTP on subsidies, which we didn't get. We had asked for regional council to fund quite a bit. Under this option, we could do it probably without subsidy, subject to further analysis. Once again, it's concept phase only, but with some either drainage work improvements or even recontouring earthworks at Tahi Hill, we could quite easily 400 homes could be provided for on that farm we already own. With some more earthworks, we could get up to 700 homes. So that would be the existing residential area. No plan changes, but just allowing growth within the existing residential zones. We could actually provide for all of that within Tahi Hill Farm itself without needing any additional land.
With option 2, with the 1,200 homes, are you saying that if we were going to do... So option 2 doesn't include the 1,200 homes being on the Tahi Hill site?
No. This is all in Matata and also to the east, those high dunes up behind where produce patch in that area. It's really speaking to how much of that land could we irrigate, and so how many homes equivalent could we service just with that land. So having the treatment plant and irrigation on that one farm. So we think there's an opportunity there to look at, with some earthworks and improved drainage work, accommodating up to 700 homes within Matata itself.
All right, thank you.
I think just the core difference with the big one, with the option 1, is you have to build that from day one, because obviously it's a big plant, whereas what we'll show you with this one is modular, and so you can build it as Matata grows. over the next
Yes,
20,
expanded
30,
over
40
time.
years.
Okay.
Andrew?
Andrew?
Thank you. Nicholas, you keep mentioning the 6.7 million that was made available by the health department. I thought we had used a fair hunk of that over the various schemes that we've sort of been
No.
funding up until now.
No, we haven't used it. We can't uplift that until, essentially, we've got the consent and are forging on with the capital works of the project. It's to help fund the physical works.
Excellent. Excellent. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Just on the figures there, the OPEX remains the same for the 400 and 260?
It will drop slightly.
Right.
What we've more looked at is where we think we could get the biggest gains. It will still, it wouldn't like half or anything like
Yeah.
that. But you will have some cost
Okay.
savings in
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it is quite a bit lower already from the 600 and something figure it was.
that. Quite a bit lower. Yeah.
Have we got a photo of it? Of the
Yep.
coming up? So this is a new system, and it is used elsewhere, including, I think the largest one is Jack's Point in Queenstown. It's up to 700 homes. So it's similar scale elsewhere. There are smaller ones available as well. Essentially, you have these units which are partially buried, and through those membranes, I guess you'd call them, there's bacteria on there or microorganisms which are helping to reduce the nutrients in the wastewater. But that's largely it. It's sprayed onto those systems. So that photo on the left there, that's Jack's Point. That is the wastewater plant in its entirety. So it's very unobtrusive. That's all you see is the lids of these tanks that are buried in the ground, and they are modular, so they can be expanded over time as growth occurs. And then there's different sorts of irrigation. You could do above ground irrigation or subsurface. And
Yeah, to be fair, the soakage field's outside the fence, isn't it? And the field to the left.
yes, yeah. So there's different types of irrigation, but we would be relying on the land treatment as well itself. That's an important part of the treatment process.
And I think just in terms of obviously having neighbours and that we do, even though it is a 56 hectare farm, is just in the shadow on the left is that little shed that holds all of the equipment and the computer equipment, and that's pretty much it. And then the rest of it, you probably wouldn't even notice that it's sitting on that farm.
Yeah. So, in terms of the pros and cons, so I mean, I won't read them all out there, but it does meet a lot of the objectives. There are still some costs that go with building a new scheme, but it is pretty affordable in terms of what was included in the current long-term plan. So optimisation of Tahi Hill, what does that mean? There are some high groundwater levels there at the moment, but so around 20% is suitable currently all year for irrigation. And we don't just irrigate in summer. We need to be able to irrigate, throughout the winter as well when it gets a bit wetter. Yes, but we are looking at, how could we maximise the use of the land, that 56 hectares, and with some drainage work, possibly recontouring, earthworks, we actually think we can provide sufficient irrigable land for the initial 400 homes and even longer term to 700 homes, all within that one site. And there are some costs associated with that. And those are estimates that we've had. We haven't gone out to market or anything.
I think just pointing out, and sorry, that 1.67 actually includes GST, so it's around about 1.45 in today's dollars, which is a lot cheaper than if we had to go and try and buy additional land or an additional farm. So.
And so here's a sort of a concept for what could be done, and that's essentially looking at earthworking the hill down and redistributing that soil around the around the farm. It is rural Pamacy, so it's really free draining. It's actually ideal for this irrigation. We just need to raise the land level or above the groundwater table or reduce the groundwater table. And so that enables more year-round irrigation of the farm.
I think just pointing out that for the 400 homes, we would only have to do drainage, which means in essence you're dropping the groundwater level rather than we're contouring the land to raise the land level. So for 400 homes, we would be able to, at a high level costing and look at the moment, we would be able to achieve that with drainage alone.
So just a bit of a comparison between the different options. I mean, it sort of speaks to itself, really. The moderate scale option is still a good level of treatment. It's just not quite as high, but with the land application, it can be done so that nutrients aren't getting through the groundwater or the surface waters. And it is a comparatively more simple operation than what a larger scale activated sludge plant would entail.
So with
Could you put your microphone on?
Sorry, my apologies. My question was, what did it mean by controllability? With the activated sludge type process, which was option 2 that we presented middle of last year, that is a high level of treatment process that you've got complete control over. You've got buttons you can press to make it do what you want it to do. With option 3, the type of technology, it's a much simpler technology and you really can't control the process in the same way.
So when you have to upgrade the irrigation, for times like this, where will it go when you're irrigating? Are you sending it out like the runoff or the excess water?
Yeah, so what you could end up with is a little storage area, storage tank, storage pond, where once it's treated, if it's too wet like today, if it's heavy rain, you could put it into the storage pond until this is treated, so it's not raw stuff, until it's suitable to be able to irrigate it out to land again. And that's relatively common with these types of systems to land.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify from the different options and just looking at the costs there, with the original on page 32 on our Stella, and it is 32 on there as well. It's got 31 million capex and 64k there for that options cost, and then in the moderate scale, it's got on page 34. Estimated cost 26 million capex and 254, but it also then has 19.3 capex from day one. So are those costs added together, or are they just showing what the difference is? Because otherwise, I might have it wrong, but it looks like it's more expensive than the original option.
We've got a costing summary slide that we'll just put up now,
and
which might help. It just sets
clarify,
it out and compares the different options, and that I think will help answer that question.
I didn't hear it all, sorry.
Oh, no, I just wanted clarity. I may have been reading it wrong, so I just wanted
So the options aren't that they're actually all separate. So, we've just got a little slide that we'll put up that shows the difference, but
Thank
roughly
you.
I think,
Yeah, because it was like, are those separate costs? Are those? Yeah. Thank you.
Next one. Yeah, so this is the total cost. Just be aware, I have got, this is the one that doesn't include GST with the drainage. So you'll see with option 1, and this is all today's dollars. So you've got roughly a $32.5 million cost. That's a 31 million capex and a 1.5 million to get Tahi Hill Farm for 400 homes. And then if you did option 2A and you built it from day one for 400 homes, it's roughly 27.5 million. And then if you built it for 260 homes, it's 20.8. And on the very far right is if you include the 6.7 million that we have in the subsidy, you'll see that there is quite a difference between option 1 and 2. But if you went for 2B and built it for 260 homes modular, it would roughly cost you in today's dollars about $14 million.
And there's ability to have development contribution fees as well?
Yes, so if you built it for 260 homes and you and it grew to 400 or 700, any new development can include development contributions for the cost of that modular upgrade. I wouldn't say growth would pay for growth, but you would have development contributions as a core part of your funding plan for that project over the 30 to 40 year term.
And those DCs, I can see people doing the maths now, they're not out of, they're within cooey of what other DCs are charged elsewhere for the sort of infrastructure.
So does that mean with the bottom one, 2B, so that's for what's there now, the 260?
Yeah.
Will that include the 3 marae?
Yes, we've got it
the
costed
camping ground?
in essence, it's costed at the moment to attach everybody that's there.
Yep, will be 40. So when you expand it from 260 to 400, do you have to do it in one hit, or just do it as people build homes? Because do you just add another one of those square pods? So that you're actually not going to spend an extra 6 million, you just do it.
That's correct. So my understanding, and Glenn may shout from the back, is that a step tank, so that's when you're in that thing and you saw the green things and there's those little circular things around it. Those tanks can do about 20 to 25 homes. So if you were looking forward in terms of your planning over the next 5 years and you're expecting that we're going to get a growth scenario of 20 homes per year, you'd be putting in one of those containers per year, and you would be able to fund that and also collect your development contributions against that. It's a great thing about having a modular designed system.
I've got 2 quick questions. The first one is, so the Tarawera River for Restoration Group, they're approving of this? I've seen it already?
Yeah, so we don't directly go to them, but we work through the full co-design group.
She's in the group with
Yeah,
you.
and so we have obviously all our 3 iwi and the Ngāti 3 hapua fully represented on that. And we have taken this right through with them as we've got a change in growth assumptions. The last 6 months, we've taken them through this process. They endorsed the refined option at their last meeting. They've also had a site visit on Monday up to Tahi Hill Farm to look at the opportunity of doing a further detailed cultural report on that farm. Yep.
Okay, and there's no discharge to the water, it's all discharge to land?
All discharge to land, and we would just manage the land a little bit differently under this option, because we'll be using the land to treat, in essence, deal with the nutrients, so we might have to do things like cut and carry and things like that, but very normal operations to what other schemes in New Zealand are doing.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's a different system to the original major treatment plant, do we have to go through resource consents all over again?
Oh, we haven't gone through the consent process, but we're still need to go through that process. Yeah.
We're probably, to be honest, at that point, it's what we're looking for direction on today. We've pretty much completed, from a project management perspective, I wouldn't be suggesting any more technical work to be spent. We have got a option we think is appropriate. It's been through the co-design group. It fits with everything that you've got in your long-term plan and your local water done well work. We are really at the point where we could move to a consenting strategy and start looking at developing a resource consent application, which also then means we could update our business case and have another conversation with external partners about a co-investment opportunity on a project like this.
Can you just expand on that? Because of the new RMA reforms, is it better for us to wait a little bit, or is it better for us to kick off now?
We will keep a close eye on those, as well as a close eye on what's happening with the wastewater standards, the consenting strategy, that if you're okay and we would move into that phase, that would fully outline weighing up the pros and cons of do we wait a little bit till all of that's in place, we would definitely be looking at the benefits of doing that.
I say you're all over it. Thank you.
Sorry, I just getting clarity on the refined recommended option for option 3. Which one is that one out of the, because it's just confusing me with option 2,
Sorry.
option
Yeah.
2A.
I had the slide, we moved the options around.
yeah.
So I'm very sorry. So 2A and 2B is actually option 3.
Yeah.
But you could choose to say, we'll just build it from day one for 400 homes, or you can choose that we will build it from day one for 260 homes. And
Okay.
it has a cost difference.
That's
Sorry.
cool, just so that we know that we're not voting for either one or the...
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
mostly, option 1 is big scale, option 2 in our presentation, and option 2 is option 3, which is the moderate
Option 3,
scale.
option 2 is option 3,
It will be,
okay.
it will be laid out more consistently in a future report to the IMP committee
I
in
apologise,
September.
Thank you for that clarification. So effectively, from what our original option was, there's a saving of over $12.3 million.
Correct.
And
And probably about a half in your ongoing OPEX.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just another thought, at the Super Local Conference, the phrase "growth pays for growth" was repeated quite a lot. And I think you said just before, Nick, growth won't really pay for growth. Is there a way we can get more funding? Because when they were talking about growth pays for growth, they're talking about urban and metro. Is there a way we can be used as a pilot by government for them to help subsidise us to roll it out as an example for new subdivisions in rural sections?
I think we'll look at exploring all avenues. I mean, I also note that the government are doing quite a bit of work in the infrastructure funding space and looking at replacing development contributions with development levies and potentially changes to the Infrastructure Funding and Financing Act. I think they're due out in November, so we'll have a really close look at those when they do come out, as well as in terms of the business case that we can update. So we'll look everywhere we can to try and make it more affordable, yes.
Well, they probably know more about water and discharge and all the rest of it than anyone else, but this modular system seems like a pretty good short, medium and long-term solutions that, you know, maybe Whakatane District could be used as an example. Like ministers and that love ticking a box and hanging their hat on something to say they're working closely with us, and they've just demonstrated being able to save with smart thinking $12 million. Whoever our people are that are going to be doing all of that, Steve, is it you?
We'll be exploring all options. I think the thing, though, that we are saying is we haven't heard of any particular funding pots or interest in that area. But, I mean, it's a sort of conversation that, we always try to explore and see if we can find something.
Yeah, but they're also looking for solutions. You don't ask, you don't get. And if you can demonstrate real cost savings, modular development with sewage treatment systems, then they may not have thought of.
Yeah.
I wouldn't wait till they have a pot of money.
The other one is we could go back to regional council and actually prove the fact that we've re-looked at it and we've tried to save costs, because one or two of those regional council have told me in the past at their meetings to come back, even though they turned us down the first time. So that 14 million may drop further, who knows? And also the local MP said that she'd support us going to the Minister of Environment, because this whole thing initially started as a health and environment issue.
And Ngāta Rangatihi, through their Tarawera Awa restoration strategy work and everything, are also having quite a lot of conversations with politicians and ministers, and are very clear that the reticulation of wastewater in Matata is a critical action to achieve their strategy.
Just with it sort of being on the verge of, if we give this a green light soon for the best option, and the resource consents, what is the I suppose, what are the risks in terms of what happens down the track with a multi-CCO? What aspects of this project will be managed through that? Is this something that the council manages and then the services are looked after by that multi-CCO? It's just trying to ensure that we go green light on this and then it forges ahead. Is there risks to the multi-CCO establishment?
Yeah, I think it's all about timing. Yeah, so I think a CCO establishing itself would love to have a project that is ready to go, potentially consented, with a finance base, particularly a central government contribution. So I think the risk initially is quite low that they would do something different. I think they would see the commitment that's been made over a long time and want to follow through, because it would essentially become a win for them, wouldn't it, to deliver it?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I really like this modular approach, but my question is there any, so between 260 and 400 homes, is there any benefit in doing 400 at once? Like, is there any, doing it at once, does it create any saving as opposed to doing it over a period of time?
Yeah, you would get a little bit of cost saving by doing it all up front rather than having the contractor coming back and having the setup and establishment, disestablishment costs. So there would be some savings there. There would also be some benefit around the quality of the treated effluent that was produced. If you only had 260 houses connected at the start, but you built for 400, then it would provide a higher level of treatment at the beginning.
Thank you. Would those cost savings be significant or pretty marginal?
Yeah, in the scheme of our $20-30 million, it would be relatively low proportion of that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I think also it takes into account that we think there will be a moderate growth forecast for Matata over time.
Yeah.
So in essence, how long it takes you to get from 260 to 400 homes could be quite a while.
Yeah.
And therefore building what's appropriate. And a lot of what's coming out of the draft National Infrastructure Plan and discussions at that level, and I'm heavily involved in the transport side of that at the moment, it's all about right-sizing infrastructure and ensuring that it is future-proof to be able to grow with growth, but being very much right-sized.
Thank you.
Which is a plus for this.
Further to what Councillor Tensell said, I personally would like us to go for the 400 homes, but the confliction in my head is the amount of money being spent and the cost on the rates. So I actually am really pleased that for 260 it would only be 14 million, but maybe we should just plan for 280 to allow for that initial growth. But I like that option. I think it's more realistic financially for everyone. It fulfills the needs and it allows people in Matata to, and I know there are people are planning on doing pakanga, etc. But it allows for that and then allows for gradual increase. And I think that would be better on the people, so I'm all for that. Thank you.
Jonathan.
Further to that, sorry.
There you go.
Just further to that, I think that's a good point about betting, allowing for a certain amount of growth, because I would have thought when there's a reticulated system in place, you might get quite rapid infill housing, right, when that becomes available. I don't know what kind of modelling's been done, but that you could see people quite quickly subdividing up and bringing in relocatables and whatever, right?
Correct. So I think what we do is if we were going to move to our consenting strategy, you probably, I agree with you, Gavin, you wouldn't construct for 260 from day one. We might do 280.
Yeah.
You may even choose that you'd want 2 or 300.
Yeah.
And we would bring that back and be able to look at the costings for you. But and you are right, it's exactly the same thing when you put a road in.
Yeah.
People come and start developing.
Yeah.
I would expect you will have the similar with the wastewater scheme. I still think it would be moderate though. I still think it wouldn't be a big, you'd all of a sudden in the next 3 years have to come up with another 3 pods to put in. I don't think it'll be like that. I think you'll have quite a moderate, gradual growth scenario.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's good.
And I guess you never know that in the future, these bioreactor beds may be smaller, more efficient, and cost less. And so, if we only settle for 260 homes to begin with, we may be able to install these. No doubt modern technology will allow us to do that maybe cheaper and more efficiently.
And the interesting thing with Queenstown is they actually have 3 different locations for their 700 homes that they're using the pods and the step systems and that for. So it also can be relocatable in the sense if you grew further out east, you can have a really serious look at whether or not you put that wastewater scheme sitting there or not. So they are also, they don't all need to be in the same place when you're growing either. You just need to have appropriate disposal land and treatment of the wastewater.
I just, on that discussion, a couple of things also just to think about, because there will be a paper that comes back for a decision with a whole pile of options, and this will all get explored in the options. But the other thing, the things that sit in my mind are actually incentivising our rapid subdivisions in Matata means that all of those old septic tanks come out of the ground. So your councillors would also have to be thinking about actually your ability to use that as a lever to get those septic tanks out of the ground and everybody onto a reticulated system. And the other thing I think about too is if you're not, if you're restricting your scope of growth, the 400, then actually you're restricting how much you can collect in development contributions to offset the cost. And if you went with development contributions at, say, around $35,000 to $40,000 per new section, which is cheap, by the way, then you'd probably be clawing back about another $5 million. So all of a sudden your $20 million does start to come down towards 14, but actually then you've got the additional cost of waiting for the development to occur. So there are quite a few sort of like little moving parts, but when the options come back in the council paper, that's when all of that stuff gets explored in each option.
I'll just mention that in April we set up a thing called the Mayor's Task Force for Water, which has had now 3 meetings. The first one was a get to know everybody sort of orientation meeting. The second one really was about potable water, so they got a tour of the Whakatane drinking water plant, and a little bit of discussion about the other drinking water schemes. And the third one was on Matata wastewater, but their brief really was to focus on the environment and human health aspects in the first instance. I'm collating their feedback at the moment, so I don't have a consolidated view yet. We never really addressed these scenarios of what happens if you want to densify Matata and what technologies would be looked at, or any larger scheme beyond that. I guess we will do that in the future. Timing, this will feed back somehow, we haven't decided yet, but probably advice to council. So that's where that's at. I will provide background as I get it.
Just on that. So was Janine advising the task force? Right.
Well, they're contributing. Yeah.
So, but basically you got the same
Jess
information that
Jess and Nick presented at the last meeting, yeah.
Thank you.
From what I understand, we shared the peer review documents and the results of the peer review process with all members. That's what so
yeah, they've been provided all reports. Is that correct, Dave? There was an issue with the latest monitoring data in Matata, which they haven't seen, but that's only just come to me now. I guess I'll share that with them in due course. So the idea is to gather all of their thinking and put it in, consolidate it, see if there's a overall view, and then feed that in, and then I guess address options for this sort of thing as well.
Will all that feedback that they gather, will that go back to the team too, or will you collate it first with your lens over it?
I'll collate it, flick it back to them, make sure that it reflects what they're saying, and then we'll put it in either as a council report. I mean, I'm not sure, we haven't actually decided yet how to, it's advice, but this group is pretty high powered actually. They're mostly engineers, about 5 of them, and some of them are actual real specialists in wastewater treatment and stuff like that. So you'll get their backgrounds as well when I put it all together.
Sorry, just checking. So does this peer review report have an impact on the decisions that we end up making in terms of what option we decide?
So,
The peer review, that's the ESR review you're talking about.
Oh no, the what you're collating.
What their views are, it may do.
What's it costing us?
Well, they're not costing us anything. A cup of tea and some biscuits.
Can I just respond to
Is there
Councillor
a time for?
Can I just respond to Councillor Boynton's question? It seems to me that what it will be is an independent body that's giving us their thoughts, really, and so we would take them into account as we would any other information before us, but the decision still lies with the council.
Yep, they are just feeding in advice and evaluations from a different angle. It's another set of eyes, basically. Quite an expensive project. I think it's useful to have, and they really are. We've got quite a high level of expertise.
sorry, just to clarify though, they haven't seen any of the options in terms of what...
No, we never really, well, Nick was there, we haven't really discussed any details of, on-site treatment or cluster systems or any of that yet. We're just addressing, in the last meeting was really just about the environment and human health risks in Matata at the moment.
As in whether there's a need.
Well, I mean, I don't want to preempt because I haven't finished looking at their feedback. I mean, some haven't yet given me their feedback in writing, some have. So it really wouldn't be right for me to come up with something. It was only just last week.
Yeah, the discussion was more around interpretation of monitoring data. Was really what it focused on.
There was some information that came to light after the peer review, in fact, which was the date that the on-site effluent treatment system at the Matata pub went in. It went in May of 2023, and that can be seen in the data. So anyway, there's all quite a bit of technical stuff there, and as soon as I get it, I'll put it together and share it. Andrew?
Thank you. I was just asking, was there a timeline on when this is all going to come together, Victor?
As quick as I can work.
You say it's just a matter of getting a few final written reports.
Yeah,
together.
Tyrone Newsom, for example, did some verbal feedback at the meeting, and I'd really like it in writing rather than me trying to remember what exactly he said. And one of the others hasn't fed back either. One member of the group who's never actually turned up was Susan Naylor, and I'm not sure of her status, but she's the wastewater engineer from Fonterra. It would have been useful to have her there, given what she works on, but I think we have to just basically accept that she's probably never going to turn up.
But this is going to work in tandem with what our project team's going to do. So we don't have to sit and pause until that information comes through. We can continue doing what we're going to do.
I mean, the issue of what the status of the environment there is, I think, separate from the issue of what you would have to do if you built out or you did some infill development in Matata itself. So, is the existing systems won't be satisfactory, which is what we've just said anyway. But I think that there's a timing, given that we seem to be moving more towards greenfields development and Awakeri as a preferred, as what I've been hearing from the spatial plan anyway, as, you know, being closer to Whakatane and all that, that seems to be more the preferred option at the moment for greenfields. But for infill and Matata, well, you would have to address the current, you know, what system you would have, which, I mean, some of these cluster systems that you've described here could be quite good. And as I said before, there are about 12 different types of, at least, on-site effluent treatment systems that are light years away from what's in the ground at the moment over there. So the cluster system's quite attractive, really, I suppose. And, you know, as many members have already mentioned, the idea that it can be modular and built out as and when required is attractive too. So that's something that this group hasn't looked at yet.
So I just wanted to clarify, we're not waiting for this group and your report. We can just proceed.
I think we can proceed.
Yeah. So
well, if the group comes back and says, well, okay, there's not an existing problem in Matata, it still doesn't get us out of the soup as far as what would happen if people wanted to develop in Matata, as in densify it.
It would be really interesting if your group came back and said there is no issue in Matata when the Department of Health, going back 19 years ago, said there is a massive problem in Matata and you either fix it or we'll put it in, you either go reticulate or we'll put it into a maintenance zone. And if you put it in a maintenance zone, we're going to lose 95 houses. So I appreciate you've got a team of experts there, but if they came back and said there was no issue in Matata, and I know you've always said that, Mayor, I find that conflicting with the Department of Health, with the Regional Council, and that would lead to a real problem in my mind, is which way you go.
So what do you need from us today?
So at this stage, what our intention is to bring a report to the Infrastructure and Planning Committee on the 4th of September, where we'll be seeking direction as to the future of this project. And in that we'll cover, you know, I guess some of the drivers behind it, noting that there's a technical aspect, but there's also cultural aspirations and growth aspirations as well, and what they can achieve in terms of the spatial plan. So there are a range of factors, I think.
I'll just respond to Councillor Dennis. In 2012, ESR did a report. Have you seen it? Probably not, so maybe you should look at it. But it doesn't sing the same tune as the Department of Health, which I haven't seen what their view on this thing is. The peer review was quite nuanced. I don't know if anyone's actually read it, but it's quite a few pages. It's not saying, you know, this is a screaming problem at the moment. That's not my reading of it. So we're going to get some more eyes on it. And there's more data that's coming in even as we speak, which I haven't even seen. So all we can look at is what we've been given. But I guess I only received it today.
I think all I can say is we've been on this project for 4 years. We also have an immense amount of expertise on the project. We have followed all due process, all regulatory processes to make sure that we can bring you the best practical, affordable option that we can, which we do. I obviously, as the project manager, have a bit of different point of view around the peer review. The peer review concurred with all technical reports and technical recommendations that we have used to influence the planning steps we have taken and the information that we have reported to you over the last 4 years, every 7 weeks. So it has always been backed up by evidence. We peer reviewed that evidence. They concurred with the technical team's position and the data, and we have used that to build our advice. What has happened in the last 6 months is a change to growth assumptions. So what we've done is we have gone back and again looked at how we could right-size to address and deliver all project objectives: environmental, health, cultural, growth, and the aspirations that the community and iwi and hapu out there have. That's what we'll bring back to you on the 4th of September. I think what I'd like to say is I don't think there's value in spending more money on technical work. Obviously, that's your choice, but from a project perspective of being able to bring you options, I don't feel there's anything more we can add to this. And so what we'd like to bring on the 4th of September is a report, and we are ready, if you choose, to move to resource consent, whether on a larger scheme, such as what it looks like at Rotoiti Rotomar, or on a more modular scheme, as well as you can choose a maintenance zone. But just be aware there are also significant costs for a maintenance zone, and there are new systems that house owners can use, but they are very, very expensive. And so I think we haven't costed the maintenance zone because it's not ours to enforce, but there will also be substantive costs associated with the maintenance zone.
We're spending more money on technical work. What are you referring to?
Well, I just mean if we've been monitoring now for 3 years, so we don't feel
Well,
that we need to do
I'm
any
not
more.
suggesting
No,
that.
I'm sorry.
No.
I mean, I'm just meaning we're ready to
I'm just
come on the 4th
suggesting
of
looking at
September.
data that's already there that hasn't been provided. That's
I
all.
have seen some of the monitoring stuff that I guess, at the end of the
You're not a
day,
technical person.
no, but I trust my technical team.
Thank you, thank you for the report, Janine, and all the work you guys have been doing. I'm going to see Matata Wastewater come up again. I think, oh, here we go, but it's always informative. So, and I understand the great work you're doing. And I'm one of those again, I go ask the people on the ground. So I'm certainly think that they'll have a firm view that there needs to be something better than what they've got right now. But yeah, thank you guys for your report today.
Also want to mahi too for the mahi, but also too since this term anyway, being able to hear of those who've experienced and lived through, and also obviously having a member on council who's lived through this entire process, those stories itself, but also to the way the community has rallied, has overcome and worked together in a collaborative approach, which is very rare, which is really something that we could see as the jewel for our rohe in terms of how we work through, and the consistency and tenacity to get through to these stages, adapt and turn, and also come back again with some savings for us in terms of being that detailed. I think it's a great model that not only could, is being looked at to be replicated throughout our organisation, but also other councils definitely would look at that as a model in which the collaboration of those who've had to live through some of the worst things, coming together to resolve it, find a solution, and also find cost savings to make it happen. So thank you.
All right, we're done. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next, 4.3, Water Services Delivery Plan. Ooh. See how that goes.
Good morning. So the purpose of this paper is really just to give you a heads up around the direction of the Water Services Delivery Plan. This is the plan we have to provide to DIA by the 3rd of September, and it's going to come to you on the 14th of August for approval. So I guess it's a bit of a test that we're on the right steer, and that we've reflected your decisions from June accurately in the document itself. The document, here we are. There we go. Document itself is a template, so DIA has set out pretty well what we have to follow, and it's sitting here, 150 pages of basically numbers and words. Great read. So just to confirm where we've been, so your decisions on the 26th of June, aim was to ring fence and set up a standalone business unit by 1 July 2027. We have to ring fence in the legal sense by that date, but to also investigate the Three Waters CCO with Rotorua Lakes, Kawerau and Aporiki. So there's two things happening at once during the period once this plan is approved. Your criteria for approving a multi-council CCO is that will deliver lower cost services over the long term to users of water services. So that's our aim, if you like, in terms of those conversations with those other councils, is to prove that And you also, on the 26th of June, approved a reprofiled works program, particularly for our capital works in Three Waters to meet basically regulatory compliance. And that does have some implications on the way the LTP was set up. We'll get to that. Covered most of this already, so you're required to adopt your water services delivery plan. The one thing I haven't mentioned so far is that DIA have come to us in the last couple of weeks asking for a draft water services delivery plan to be provided by Thursday, tomorrow, which is why we have one. A number of councils got that letter. Generally, it's on the back of your decision in June. They've seen what that is, which was going from, I guess, a preference in your consultation document for CCO to setting up a standalone business unit and further investigate the CCO option. What they've compared that to is our LTP and have said, well, on the face of it, it doesn't appear you can be financially sustainable on that basis. So what we can show tomorrow is through the reprofiling of that work program that we can be financially sustainable as a standalone business unit. But there are some implications of that. And I just want to make sure that you're really clear what those are, so you understand what we're buying into, I guess. I think I've covered all those others. The only other point is, we put in the plan by the 3rd of September. The turnaround is pretty quick. So the week of the election time, somewhere around there, we should get a yes or a no to our plan. We will also obviously get feedback on the draft plan we put in on Thursday prior to that date. It's going to be very tight in terms of your 14th of August council date, though. So as best we can, the resolutions on that day are likely to include giving the Chief Executive some flexibility just to respond to the feedback if necessary. Right, so the revised Three Waters program, probably the crunch to this, is we reviewed it with Tonkin and Taylor very early this year, and then subsequently with Becker's when the wastewater standards came out, and that was really to see whether our funding proposed for our wastewater plants was on point or not. What that allowed us to do was, say, reprofile the program. Its implication for the LTP, for the life of this LTP, is that your current investment is 190 million. That needs to go up to 215.7 million. So by the end of this LTP to meet that program, it gives us essentially a spend each year of about 21 million in CapEx for the long term, essentially. And so currently, just as a comparison, for the last year we spent about 25 million, and this year we're spending probably something similar. So it's within the ballpark of what we currently spend. Prior to those years, our spend was down at around 10 to 13 million. So we've taken quite a leap in the last couple of years in terms of investing and spending and achieving that, but we need to now maintain it pretty well for the next fair while.
To clarify, so what we planned for in the original LTP that we had was based on what was happening at the time. Are you saying that because of the policy changes that have happened from central government, this has now meant that we've had to revise and those costs have increased?
What it means is we have reprofiled. So we have moved things out that might have otherwise have been less, compliant reliant, if you like, and have tried to smooth that budget so that it's a relatively even spend of today's 21 million over a longer period of time. And that's trying to touch on the affordability component. So it's trying to smooth out those cost increases rather than the LTP plan had large dips and dives in it. And so there was large capital spends and then back to, if you like, the normal, and then another big leap. So it's trying to smooth all of that out to touch on that affordability component.
So are you saying that's the same amount of money but it's just been spread out further?
A couple of things have happened. So the Tonkin and Taylor test, if you like, was making sure we weren't gold plating anything. That led to some minor changes, to be honest. The Becker's review was around the wastewater standards.
Yes.
And so we are assuming that those proposed wastewater standards will have an impact and bring down some costs that were otherwise factored into the longer term. So the ocean outfall for Whakatane wastewater, for instance, is probably the main one there. We had a figure of, I can't remember, Glenn will know, he's gone, 68 million or some number like that. We can probably save nearly all of that based on the proposed wastewater standards.
Okay.
So that's an example. The other main one was Tane Atua wastewater.
So this is really to meet stricter sort of regulatory standards that have been put in place to ensure that we are able to demonstrate our affordability of our schemes.
Yeah, well, the critical point is our financial sustainability.
Financial
So
sustainability.
that we can put up a credible standalone option that meets that criteria. And that's what DIA will be looking at. So it's not only that we are delivering what we need to deliver to meet compliance and other needs, but the bit we'll get to is obviously the revenue that we need to meet that cost. And I'll get to that very shortly.
So this isn't a surprise, there's an extra bit of cost, or that it's a cost we haven't calculated, it's a rearrangement of how that's going to be presented to ensure we meet affordability, sustainability.
Principally, yeah.
I mean, the wastewater standards, which are still making their way through committees and things, I think we've been thrown a little bit of an olive branch. I mean, as you said, we didn't have any standards before. So the existing standards are relatively permissive. The ones that are going through Parliament, should I say. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I've become a little bit more confused now. I had thought Councillor Boynton's question was around what's driving the difference between the 190 and the 200 and the 215 mil spend over the life of the LTP, and you said a couple of things that I thought sounded like they'd saved us some cost.
Yep.
So,
okay, this is where it does get confusing. So originally we had, didn't want to go here, we had a needs-based budget, and that was like $440 million that we probably needed to spend over the next 10 years, but of course couldn't afford to do so. What we settled on in the LTP was 190. To meet principally our compliance requirements, we will need to increase that 190. Yeah.
we just haven't allocated enough.
Yep. And that's, I think, driving the DIA. The DIA will go, hang about, this doesn't seem like you've that 190 is 70% of our renewals that we should be, as an example. And so they'll be clicking into things like that and going, yeah.
A like-for-like replacement, but the satellite communities, I mean, this is where we're in a difficult spot compared to smaller communities like Kawerana-Poriki, where they've got a blob. We've got a bit of a blob, not that many ratepayers, and then we've got satellites, and that makes life difficult for us. It makes us a bit unique, I think.
Yeah. An example of that is we still have 30 million sitting in the budget for Murupara. Now, whether we need 30 million, I don't know, but that's still sitting in a budget out in time a bit.
And has happened with Matata, where you go from 30 million. If we look harder, we might find better ways of doing things if we can think outside the box a bit.
Yep.
So that's the hope.
Yep. And just to finish this slide off, that reprofiled budget was tested with both Taumata Arawai and the Regional Council, because I guess the key is ultimately they're the regulators. So how quickly, once we get new resource consents or have to meet new standards, will they tolerate us essentially investing over time? So where we've ended up is we should be compliant in terms of drinking water by 2028 and wastewater by 2032, with that degree of uncertainty around what the wastewater standards actually ultimately say. So that's the plan. So for the life of this LTP, or the majority of the life of this LTP, that becomes the focus, trying to make sure we are water compliant and wastewater compliant. So, and to just lay it on the table and be really clear, we just had a whole conversation about Matata wastewater. Matata wastewater is not a compliant issue from our point of view, it might be for the Regional Council. So in terms of this reprofiling, that project is now pushed out. So this is the reality of trying to show this model as an example. You could choose to do something different and bring it forward, but that will have other consequences that you'll have to consider at the time. Yeah.
Urgent area is Edgecombe Wastewater.
Yep. Yes.
Can I just to clarify, David, so the 30 million for Matata or 40, no, 30 for, was it Matata you were talking about? That's not in that figure there, is it?
No.
No, okay.
Another question then. So, in terms of the 21 million spend per year for the next 30 years, that's, it's a lot of money. But in terms of rates increases, that's already bedded in what we collect. So we've got, if we're spending that now, we've already got that locked into the rates take. So that's not necessarily leading to an increase in rates take.
You will have to relook at your next LTP.
Yeah.
You will have to factor this model into your new LTP. So it could have some implications. But we're making no difference to, obviously, to this year and next. Yes.
But it's that difference, 190 to 215.
Right.
Well, that's,
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's good.
Unless we can get it down further.
Unless we can get it down further. So, flipping it from what we have to invest in terms of what we have to get in terms of money, what this does mean is average water charges increase from about $2,000 now if you get all services to a figure of $4,400 in 2034, and that's an inflated figure. So remember when we went out in consultation, it was like 3,200 or that's the inflated version of that number. And again, that's the reality of the cost of water.
So is that the reality of the cost of the three waters for our ratepayers?
That's what it will mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what they wanted.
What it means in terms of borrowing, it says currently we've borrowed 60 million for our waters. It's actually 78 for this financial year. That's actually the previous financial year's figure. But it is going up to 217 million by this prediction in 2034. So in other words, quite a bit of further investment. What that means in terms of this water revenue, so your revenue to debt ratios, we can't exceed 500% for water. We hit a peak of 461, and the council overall debt can't exceed 280%, but you have a self-imposed limit in the moment in the LTP of 250%. We come pretty close to that at 246% in 2030. So again, you might want to look at that in your next LTP. So it's just, I guess what I'm really highlighting there is it starts to squeeze the debt headroom you have for other activities. And that's the point. So, ring fencing, the intention would be as soon as DIA hopefully approve our plan, there is a program of works to start ring fencing our services, particularly our financials. So that includes a separate ledger for waters from everything else, debt, all those other financial matters, trying to separate them out. And obviously overheads is probably the slightly trickier one because we do account for, your spends and the like per activity in the water space already, but your IT, your finance, your HR, customer services, we will need to start to proportion time and cost against all of those activities, which are currently just sort of wrapped up in a general overhead. It's got there, the goal is to fully separate financials by June next year. That might be quite ambitious, but the intention is to certainly do all the investigative work so we know what needs to be done and progress down that path. The intention is to fully ring fence by 1 July 2027, and that will then link into your next LTP. So we'll know where we stand in terms of standalone within council still, or are we progressing to the CCO?
Morning, David.
Hello.
It's a little bit grim. It must be hard working within the framework that you've got to work. So if we go back to, let's say, 4,000. So when we were talking about 3,300 and now we're looking at 4,000. So
Yeah, same number.
inflated, yeah. So, at the moment you pay your water rates, let's just say $500 a year, and then you pay for storm on your rates bill, then you pay for your stormwater, wastewater and potable water. So what we're paying now, what? $1,200?
No, it's average is about 2,000.
About 2,000.
Yeah.
So I don't think the public realise that already. So I think we need to do a little bit of work of it. This is not just going to cost you $3,000 more or $4,000. You're already, if you combine all those together, paying 2,000. So the shock of what might be coming will be lessened. Yeah. That's the comment more than anything, yeah.
Sure. Right, so that's that.
Oh,
Then-
okay, sorry. Might be a question for Justin, maybe. So on the rates bill, when they're separated out, can you change the order of the rates bill so the stuff at the top is all your UAGC and your targeted rate for tourism, whatever it was, and then we can have a subsection on stormwater, wastewater? Oh, no, because your water bill comes separately. I'm just trying to think how we can present it nicer on the bill.
Yeah, so the idea ultimately, again, is you may have a separate water bill that is all inclusive of your water costs, even within house. At the moment, you get your water consumption bill, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other comes within your general rates bill. So the idea might be to move it so it's very clear what you're paying for waters versus other council activities, with the intention if the CCO happens, then everything just moves.
Okay. All right.
That's the
Yeah,
grand
thanks.
plan
Just thinking out
Steve and
loud.
I have concocted. Right.
Can I just add the little bit that might be missing when David talked about the need to increase our capital spend from the next LTP? If we're able to move to separate billing, then it won't feature as a rates increase. It'll feature inside the fully separate water bill. So that's when we start talking about separate billing, we mean all waters, people receive a separate bill, completely separate from rates. Just yeah.
From us. Is that from us?
Oh, I think there's a bit of water to go under the bridge, but I think over the next sort of year and a half, 2 years, after the election, the next council will be figuring that one out.
Wow.
Just to follow on from that, Steve, so, is that once we move to moving to a multi-CCO, you meaning as a separate bill, or is it just a separate bill within the current structure?
Yeah. This new piece of legislation enables council, or requires council to ring fence and bill separately for waters.
Can I just supplement your question? I just want to see, with these restrictions within the current structure of what we have with council, what are, if any, advantages when it moves to a multi-CCO? Because I'm trying, I thought it meant that not only the costs, but the debt moves to that organisation as well. So that debt then is not part of this council, and therefore does that improve our affordability, meeting those regulations?
That's the theory, right, David? But actually, that's the information that will be part of this bit here, which David was just about to go through, that parallel work stream, which would be with the other councils exploring the CCO option. That sort of information would be presented back to the council at that point. But essentially, that's the theory. The reason why we're looking at it is because we're told that through scale, you can deliver this stuff more efficiently.
Does that translate into the cost to the ratepayers?
Yeah.
An improvement?
Yeah, at the household or business unit level, theoretically, scale gives you a cheaper cost.
Thank you.
Without promising cheaper waters ever.
No promises. No promises.
Okay.
I can see what you're saying makes sense, but at ground, we've just had our ratepayers up in Murupara just get used to these two different rates with the whakatane and the regional around waters, and so we're applying another one on top of that.
Not doing anything, I think it's something that we'll need to figure out and talk about.
Because
over the next year.
it's more of a comms thing, because then that will whakapōra out our iarate, will kind of confuse them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a comms thing.
Right. Yeah, so, yeah, parallel to all that conversation is this conversation that started every week. The chief executives of Rotorua, Whakatane, Poriki and Kawerau meet with staff. So the conversations have started around establishing a waters working group. The idea is as soon as post-election is practical, is that there's the mayor and a couple of elected councillors brought in together from each council to start really focusing on a CCO conversation, to consider modelling, objectives, etc., etc. The timeline for that is essentially through 2026, so the next calendar year, with the aim of decisions by all councils, either very late 2026, but probably early 2027, necessary to link into all our LTP conversations. I think all councils recognise both community and iwi engagement is absolutely essential right through the process. So there's no intention of, I guess, sitting in a back room just having a chat. Rotorua has been very clear they want to communicate regularly to their community, and I think everybody does, not to their community, to ours. And obviously iwi engagement is critical. So that's recognised. Assuming there is a decision to move to a CCO, then there's a timeline there for establishing transition boards and all the tasks that are set out in the Act that need to be done with the intention of being fully operative by 1 July 2028. And that's the absolute cut-off date for being financially sustainable in whatever we do. So that's investigation through 2026 and set up through 2027 if that decision is made. Is there another slide? Oh, there is. That's just a diagram of it. If you're not into words and you're into pictures, there's another version of that last slide. And really, I guess here the questions are just, are you comfortable with that as the approach, both in terms of what we have to say? We have to put into our water services delivery plan an implementation plan, and it's probably getting quite critical that it reflects those timelines. The CCO times and dates are matching between Rotorua, Kawerau, Poriki and ourselves, so they are all essentially set, and are trying to show obviously to DIA some consistency and that we are talking. So that's where we've got to.
Thank you, Dave. So as of today, we've been financially sustainable up until now, right? We've got water services and we've all paid for them.
I think in terms of the standards, we probably haven't invested as much as we should have. And so, water standards weren't compulsory. You did best endeavours. They're now going to be compulsory. So that's led into some of the drives. We've got, based on, and you can argue this, asset management plans around what we should have invested in. We haven't invested that full amount. So it's arguable, I think, whether, we're financially sustainable of whether we've just got away with it, whether we're running on an oily rag and we've met basic standards without necessarily new standards.
And just checking that what happens if DIA don't approve our draft plan?
Yeah, very good question. That's obviously the idea of them wanting to see a draft to make sure we're on the right lines. If we don't, I think there's a further conversation we'll have initially, so it's whether it's fix up stuff, although the intention I gather is DIA either say yes or no. Hopefully if we get a no, it's with some guidance and we can resubmit. If we can't, I think then they start to look at bringing people in to facilitate conversations. But I think that's a step away from fixing a plan that should be pretty right. Martin Jenkins have been helping us with this throughout the process. They are assisting a number of councils. We've seen Rotorua's plan, which has been for a draft and back. We're consistent with that. So fingers crossed, I think we're pretty well on the mark.
And just a general question, there's been so many councils who have been operating without consents. So if DIA didn't approve it and we had to ask for a bit more forgiveness on our consents, would they do that? Like, you know, because we have been within our consent processes and all that so far. So if we ended up not being able to get a consent for one of the schemes and that, they penalise us for that.
Not necessarily. So it's probably not so much GIA as Te Mataarawai or the regional council in terms of who the regulator is for that. The 2026 deadline, which I assume you're referring to, we have to get a consent in as essentially a placeholder. So there's a section of the RMA, section 124, which once you've got a consent in, holds your existing position basically. So you can carry on until that consent is then considered and resolved. And that's the saving grace, if you like, because you're right, otherwise there's schemes all over the country that would be without consent.
They don't turn your water off.
When you say up there that question, are you comfortable with the approach and the ring fencing? We actually haven't got a choice, have we?
No.
Probably not.
Is that why it looks like barbed wire?
Yeah. Quite like it. I like your design work there.
What was it called? Hobson's
looks
choice?
Like barbed wire. I just wanted to ask too, so these calculations are based on the current LTP in terms of the projections of what our rates increases would be, is that correct?
No.
No?
It's the LTP for the next 2 years under this current
yes.
LTP.
Yeah.
You will have to look at it all again through your next LTP for the following 10-year period. So 2027 to 2037, you will need to change some things.
Okay. What about the impact of, sorry, through the chair, impact of what rates capping would do?
Well, my understanding of the rates capping is for other activities other than, I don't know if it's core infrastructures or waters, but I think it's core infrastructure, isn't it? So I don't think they're intending to cap rates on core services and water.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the choice we've got is Hobson's choice, which is no choice.
If I just had a quick... David put up the 14th of August, we were going to bring the water services plan into council to approve so we could send it off to DIA. Mike, I just wanted to double check with the councillors. Do you need another workshop on this? Is there anything you want to dig deeper into? Because largely what David's put here at a high level is what is being written in 140 pages, which is mostly tables, numbers, graphs and things like that. So you've got two stories. We're going to ring fence, we'll move towards that. We're going to explore in our next LTP a slight increase to try and cover off some things that we may be missing. And in parallel, we're going to explore a CCO option with 3 other councils aligned to that timeline, which has been sort of basically agreed by all of the 4 councils anyway. So you kind of good with all of that? Just checking.
We talked about, but we haven't actually considered them.
Your resolutions were open,
yeah.
So they were specific about the ones we've talked about, with an invitation for any other council, I can't remember what the wording was, like-minded, to join. So it's not closing out any of that.
Should we at least approach them? I mean...
We have approached, been keeping in contact with Gisborne.
Okay.
They've been sort of moving around a little bit. They have signalled that they're interested in joining the CEs group, so they're going to put somebody on that during this CCO development process. So they'll be participating with elected officials in the working group once it gets established after the election. That's subject to change. That was just the last I'd heard on Gisborne, so they are interested in keeping a close eye on what we're doing.
Just to follow up, so it says a deadline by tomorrow. in terms of getting that through, are we today sort of agreeing in thing to that would be sent by tomorrow and that we approve it on the 14th, or what's happening?
It's a draft water services plan that DIA want to see tomorrow.
I wanted a preview.
Yeah, so
Okay.
exactly a preview.
And so we're
14th.
supporting that today?
Yes.
Just to make sure.
Yeah, yes.
Because we're having a decision come,
Yeah.
in
It's-
2 weeks' time, but
Yeah, I think, sorry, my answer is yes, but it's not the final version.
Okay.
Because we have to approve that on the 14th of August. So it can still change between now and then.
okay.
But DIA requested a copy from us by the end of the month, so that which is tomorrow.
Or to Friday, is it? Oh, tomorrow. Yes, I support sending the draft.
There's no harm in sharing it with them, just as we could share. Yeah. We all okay with that? Yes. Kapai. Thank you, David. Back at 1 o'clock. 12:30. Isn't it? No, we don't have 12:30. I better make it 1 o'clock.